if you want.
Clint, how much snow did you have up at home this weekend?
What? Come on. More than I wanted. We got about 4 the first day, then.
Really? Yeah, come on in.
Yeah, we had a little bit the second day, and then it started to melt a little bit the second day, and then on day 3, which yesterday, probably another 2.5.
Oh,
Wasn't quite enough to stop you from
We have
listening though, right?
you have Sarah.
Class. Enough. More than enough.
You use a black ball.
Yes. Yeah, and mittens.
And a ball retriever dog.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening. Thanks for joining us online. Good evening and welcome to the Orono Town Council Budget Workshop from Monday, April 6th. Roll call shows we have Councilor Larway, Councilor Hardison, Councilor Marks is online, Councilor Demerit's here, Councilor Powers, Councilor Baker, and Councilor Quinn. So for our meeting tonight, we're going to look through and have a conversation about the manager's recommended budget. We're going to first hear from the manager on the budget, and are we going to share the document online, or are we going to, we're not, are we? Is that the plan? Bring it up on the screen. The manager's going to walk us through it, and then we'll come back to council for discussion. That was the outline, Clint, that you shared with me earlier today. Is that right?
Correct.
Yep. So without further ado,
Okay, well,
do what we're here to do.
yeah. Well, so, I laid out, I got a little bit of a plan here for the conversation, but, sometimes it's fun to let the day evolve around it and be a little bit extemporaneous. So I think maybe to kick off a little bit, in building this budget, I think without question, and again, one of the things I did have to do is to thank this team, because it's been quite an effort, a lot of work to pull together and a lot of different moving pieces. And, with all the change and the adapting that we're doing, it can be stressful, but I want to say that as a whole, probably with no benefit from the leadership being common and being resolved, but just trying to get as much done as fast as possible, they are great to work with. And all the pieces did come together. And a lot of this year's budget is bringing those pieces together. I think we're really starting to get, I think it's something you said in the past, Dan, somewhat of a rhythm with what's going on, because bringing in, there was a lot of lofty goals about a new manager, the ways we could handle things as a community, the way we could be a little bit more of a leader, and how governments and towns could work. And, we started with some simple ideas of Your Voice Matters, a recruitment process that laid out a lot of town objectives that then led into, we're going to have some annual goals, which I was able to bring with you, and we've adapted into a work plan. Last year it evolved into the kickoff retreat, which brought some staff goals forward. And now those are all coming together in this manager recommended budget, which is a staff recommended budget. That's, of how we did it. Is it exactly what every department requested? No. You saw that in the first draft budget. But we've worked hard in many areas to try to get down to that 7% expense line suggestion to start us off, and that's where we are. So, I guess as we're looking through it, there's a workload management is a big part of my job. I would say that we're managing. I would not say succeeding or failing. We're definitely not failing, but we are managing. And as that workload grows and the demands grow, it does get harder and harder. Doing a budget like this is big. It's a different approach, and it's been impressive to see it come together and end up at a product like we have in front of us today. Yeah.
And as we go through it for counselors, for those watching at home, on the top of our agenda, tonight's on the top of the website, all the budget details can be found at the link at the top of our agenda. If you go online and follow that link to the 2027 budget materials. In terms of questions we get from the staff are here and they're prepared to answer questions, or the clarifying questions, or perhaps even engage in a conversation with us about items that are within their purview. How do you want us to handle those questions? Should we ask you kind of big picture questions as you go? Should we wait till you're done with your overview?
So I was about to jump into the meat of what I was going to share. If you would give me maybe 10 minutes
Okay.
or so, we could go through some of the key components of the budget Then you could take some time with me if you had any broader kind of questions for me. We'll then, as soon as I get going, I'll have Cody bring up the budget on the screen as a share screen. And then to wrap up, I think the staff's here, but this is new this year, which was going to lead into is that they're here not to do presentations tonight, but to have put together the information and to start to listen and see where the areas are you'd like to get more clarity or more information about. And that's where we'll start taking our notes from. So if that works, I could get going on that first 10-minute or so presentation level.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody? Yep. I got a thumbs up from Jacob and thumbs up from Sarah and
Okay. So you'd seen version 1 and 1.2 of a first draft that really was able to set some high level priorities. That's what led to the 7%. As when that was shared out with you, I also talked, the next thing would be the manager recommended budget, which is where we are here tonight. And then the final thing would be the council approved budget. So tonight begins the conversation of the in between step 2 and step 3. How do we go from a manager budget to a council approved budget? What are the things you need to discuss? What else would you like to know? When you look through here, similar to last year, the table of contents is there. The first thing I'd like to just jump right to is the highlights. And so I'm gonna bring up on mine as well. It's easier for me to see. Very similar to last year's format. I put all the key changes, used the same measures in prior years, talking about what changed and what didn't. It talks about the larger numbers of operating expenses being up 7.26%. That's on the bottom of page 3. And that equates to $870,659. And I do want to key in on this. The total increases for wages, benefits, insurance, and workers' compensation is $776,295. So that means all other increases in the remaining $14 million plus budget is $94,364. So again, when you look at where our increase is coming from, it's predominantly wages, benefits, insurance, and workers' comp. I'm not going to go through the rest of the bullets. Revenues are down this year, but again, that's 8.8%, 886,000 roughly. 921, so more than what we're down by, is not using reserve this year for capital projects. We talked about that in the capital improvement program. We're not going into our reserves this year. We're focusing on bonding and 3 large projects, predominantly the library, police station across the street, and the sewer expansion on Route 2 here in the downtown Main Street for replacing the clay lines that are over 100 years old. So what I really want to do is something that is new this year is the bottom of page 4, some long-term recommendations. And those are important. And I really want, remaining open to collaborations is a goal that we're going to stay with as a staff. And again, whether that's UMaine, VZ, Old Town, those are the ones we're focused the most. Those are our close, those are our nearby abutting neighbors and partners. That doesn't mean we're not open to others, but those are the ones that are right here. Again, some of the things I allude to, with UMaine, the last 3 projects they did on the University of Maine campus were taxable or were affiliated with taxable entities, well over $25 million in new valuable bought on how this staff leveraged with the University of Maine and their relationship. And those are things that I started to look at. It's year 2 of a budget and I could dig in. Second priority, I think we're looking at the county tax increase is significant. We're working with them, getting additional funding at the state level. The Maine Service Center Coalition agreed today to sign some support for $30 million of new funding into the jails for the state of Maine. That will start to help. But again, if that growth of 23% continues for Orono, that's unsustainable for us without looking at significant tax increases. So I wanted to make sure that topic's out there. And the third, which is by far the biggest of the recommendations, is titled, it's on the top of page, I'm gonna get the right page, 5, strengthen our base value with new value. Orono's got to enter into a controlled growth period. It's the only way we're going to offset increases. Sustaining the status quo without growing into what we can meet for service levels is the only way to get to the answer to lessen the growth of taxes. We need new students. We saw that in the comp plan for our school. We need some extra new value that will offset. If we do it in a controlled way, it is a profit to us on how Maine revenue sharing works. I start to explain that there at a very high level so that we begin to understand, but those are some of the goals I'm seeing as priorities that staff and I can work on to meet the larger goals the council has. So a little bit new approach to how we put it together in the beginning of the budget. From then on, budget components, same as last year. Background and definitions, I carried them through. I wanted to add more this year. Time didn't allow it. We just got to a point where I said, we're going to bring back the same ones that we put out there in prior years to use for definitions. I then put in a section called Understanding Orono's Historical Budget Data. That leads to the first spreadsheet that's in there completely new for the first time. If you could scroll to that, it is the landscape version on page 12, right there. This was a task, and I want to thank all staff that went into this, and we're actually still reviewing it. I have a meeting later this week who someone else has been reviewing this. The town uses an audit, an annual budget, and does a tax rate calculation form. All three of those take pieces of your budget and put them all together in a way. They are not singular in nature. Your budget is given to the auditor. The tax rate calculation forms are given to your auditor. They prepare financial statements. Those financial statements don't represent your budget to the layperson, but they are balanced. You've had clean audits since I've been here and in the 10 years past. This spreadsheet attempts to put them all into a common language so that you can compare to each other. It's not easy because budget formats change from year to year. The easiest line I can point to is if you look at the very beginning, starting in fiscal year 18, and you go to total operating expenses, and then below that, there's 3 lines for capital projects or grants, ARPA, and TIF. Going back to the prior years, it was hard to break them out. They weren't as detailed and separated, and the numbers change because you make changes throughout the year. As you can see in 25 and 26, we have that data. So it's not perfect, but it does begin to give you some great comparisons. The line that, as the town, based upon your direction to look at the town's expenses as a community, is the net town assessment. To remind you, town means town. Municipal means town, school, and county. So if you want to talk about the municipal budget, it means we're going to talk about schools in the county too. If we're going to talk about the town, what we control in this room, we talk about the town. Learning each year and adapting, that was an eye-opener. Reconfirm these numbers. Going to do it one more time later this week. But your net town assessment, that's the amount of property tax dollars before Betty, overlay, homestead, TIF districts, just that core number of your expenses minus your revenues. How much is left over? What do you have to tax the people for? In 2018, it was 4.5 million. By 2022, it was 4.6 million. Under your first year, under an interim manager, it dropped all the way to 4.2. Last year was at 4.5. I can tell you that's a mathematical and statistical anomaly. You cut $1 million of taxes in a 5-year period. Interesting. You had some great revenue growth, but that even exceeded what you were doing. So those are things you look to. As I'm looking back now, you were on that $5 million a year. You've done that for 3 straight years. Then you drop $1 million the very next year out of your tax commitment. That was the year you were working with Mr. Knight as the interim manager. It was a great opportunity to pass a tax break on to the residents. But again, now we're in a year where we're back up to the mid 5 millions. And should you have lowered, it's a data point that I think is important to share. The next page is the new tax rate calculation form, page 13. Full disclosure, it was missed on the initial upload. If people online saw it missing, I apologize. It happens. It's now there, you can see it, but this is the exact same format as the historical, but it only looks at last year and this year. This is where all the conversations come in. Expenses are up 7.26%. Total capital expenses are down. Total town expenses are up just under 1%, but that includes capital and all those other numbers. You've really focused on the operating line since I've been here. Revenues down $1 million, but again, of that $1 million, $900,000 was not using capital reserves. So we really did a good year to sustain that. But overall, the net town assessment is going from 4.5 million to 5.6, 22% change. That's as transparent as I can make it. That's the real impact of that. As you go down through, when we talk about the municipal budget, we know county's up 23%, and we have yet to hear what the school is. So that's why it's in yellow. The bottom yellow numbers represent numbers that are determined after commitment. That's a model I've adopted with you from prior years, is that we'll do an after commitment presentation of those. So, let's see, where we go. Didn't start here. WPCF, the only thing I want to mention with that on the enterprise fund, which is page, let's see, scroll page. 21. We adopted a plan last year that they would increase no more than 5% a year on their rates for a 3-year period. Last year being year 1, this is year 2, next year's year 3. This budget meets that. Included in that, though, is an additional staff member. There's not 100% certainty to fill that staff position, but with the use of their remaining balances and their funds, and within that 5% increase, they want to look at this. There are some growth needs, some succession planning needs. It's a good year to consider it. So that's why it was brought forward. That is the only staff increase you will see related to this budget. Capital, pages 21 and 22, or sorry, 22 and on. This is an attempt at something different. It was not in your summary budget, but you have budgets that are not what we call general fund budgets. If you look back at the definitions, general fund is Fund 10. That is the town. Wastewater is an enterprise fund. It has a different number. Reserves, different number. Grants, different number. They can have tax impacts, but it's starting to lay out capital needs and project needs. So when you start at page 22, you will see multi-year capital projects, capital things, such as the Webster project's not closed. It's probably coming in under budget. So we're going to have money left over. Starting to show these in different ways in one format. The police station is there. The library expansion is there. They're not done yet. They're not even started. But again, start time showing these because they will affect the budget and your finance department will have to incorporate them in before year end. Just to give you an idea, the capital costs, and I'm just seeing this, of all the projects listed by the finance department, 9.9 million. That's a huge number of projects. I mean, sewer, the library, the sewer, and the police station are huge projects taking a significant amount of staff time. And that all eats in our capacity to take on other things. The last, before we wrap up, is the impact on a home. Last year, this focused in on the dollar increase. I decided this year, you do the math. I'm telling you what it would cost if we spent an additional amount of money on a tax bill. So when you start at the top, if you have a home worth $100,000 or a home worth $375,000, based on our best estimates today, the $100,000 home will pay $2,146 in taxes. The $375,000 home would pay $8,000 in taxes. Then going down, if we spent an additional $10,000, not anywhere one place, but the entire municipal budget, extra 10 grand, that goes from 2146.25 to 2147.48, a little over $1 on that $100,000 home. On the $375,000 home, that's about a $5 increase, just under 0.057%. As you go down through there, this was something that was developed by you before I got here, but it shows you we spend an extra 50, you spend an extra 100, you spend an extra 500. I did this from the point of spending an additional. You can reverse the math. If you cut $500,000, it will cut $50 off a person's property tax bill. Okay, that's where that math comes together on a $100,000 home. On the $375,000 home, it cut 230. Okay, so I just wanted those there. The other one, we did put in the debt service. We had been looking at $1 million. We're going to be closer to $6 million. It gives you an idea of what $6 million of debt service means to a property tax bill when the debt service comes on. I think this is a perfect time to share with you the debt service for the bonds that we will be working on that you will need to vote on in the later summer will not hit this year's budget. Because of the timing of when we started and when you take on the debt, the first payment will happen next fiscal year 28. So those are not captured in these numbers. And I want to make sure that's out there for everybody to know. Your capital improvement program didn't know that when we were writing it. We now know it. And then that kicks in, and I'm 4 minutes over my timeline. That kicks in the departmental budgets. These completely relate to your kickoff retreat now. It's all that information brought forward. with all the updated data on FTEs, how we intend to operate, and it does put in the requested budgets by each of those categories. Just one little place if someone wanted to read what I would call the more narrative style budget. Still has some numbers, very high level. It was asked at the end of the day recently about the trio upload. That is a budget we will be putting out. The plan was to have that entered, ready, and available for viewing by the 27th of this month. So if we need to do that sooner, we can work on it, but we were hopeful to get to a more refined final budget before we started inputting them. This is where I stop and kick it to you, Dan. If you have questions for me, I'm here and ready. The outline in the agenda says which departments, gives you kind of an order. I told them to plan on going on in that order, but you can go wherever you'd like. It's your budget at this point to work with us and get more information on. So where would you have some questions?
Okay, let's, I see a hand online. Do I have any, before we take the online question, anybody have anything in the room? Doesn't mean you can't come back to it. All right, Sarah, why don't you kick us off with, some questions?
Thanks, Dan. And thank you, Clint, and thank you, staff. This budget was amazing in terms of the efforts and the product this year, just the thoroughness and the ease of comparing between each part of the document, the historical data page you highlighted, really terrific. I wanted to ask a question, Clint, on the municipal budget summary page, the one that compares FY 26 and 25. I believe it's numbered as page 13, I think, although in my online version, it shows up as 14. But at any rate, you know which one I'm talking about, Clint?
I do.
Okay, thanks. Dan, is that clear to anybody else other than me, which one I'm talking about, and Clint?
I think so. Is it, we sharing it online? Is this where we want to do?
Let
Clint?
me look. I'll see. I was looking at my own version, so I can't. Yes, that one. Thank you.
Okay.
Clint, I wanted to ask, I was looking at the net town assessment, which, as you so clearly articulated, is the part that we control before we get into county and school additions. And I'm a little confused how we're getting that figure. I had the assumption that if I took it total revenues on the town and total expenses and combined those, I should end up with the net town assessment, but I don't seem to. Do you see where I'm looking? We have total town expense gone, for example, if we look at the difference, the dollar difference, we can see total town expense up 155,267. Total
Yep.
revenue down 1,6,872. But I'm not clear how I get those two numbers to turn into 1,042,139.
So the math on the far column that you're looking is the differences.
Yep.
That bottom one, 1,042,000, 21 and 21 and
I just assumed if revenues were down and expenses were up, I should be able to add those two numbers together. And if I do
yeah,
that,
I think it's yep. So I think go ahead.
you go.
No, so I'm just looking at that now. So the column before, it's the one where I focus in on because that represents the total town expenses less the revenues. That gets you the 5,617,000, the net we have to raise. This showing the net difference. It's we're gonna have to fix that because it's within an Excel spreadsheet and it's looking at the difference of a positive and a negative number, and it's not showing the true difference. So we got to update that because it's currently showing the difference between 21 and C21 and B21, which is what the whole document does. It's showing you the growth from last year to this year only, but the net difference, the column that you add up above it, is the difference from year to year, looking at each line item. So we will have to reconcile, but that line you're looking, 1,042,139, if you added that to 4,575,836, it would equal 5,617,975. It's that whole line.
So we're saying that if I'm looking horizontally across that line, I will in fact get that 1,042,139. But when I'm looking vertically down the difference column, I don't, correct?
Yeah, and that's what I want to, I'll go back and look, but I think that's just in the math of,
Okay.
Where is it
Yeah.
again, Clint?
comes out perfectly. So it's
Um,
that bottom, the 1,042,000.
It's the
When
net
you look
town
at that-
assessment line that says 22.77% difference.
Okay.
And there's something going on with the positive and negative numbers because I see where she's coming from. 1,006,000, which is line 20, and 155,000, which is line 12. The difference of that would be close to 1.2 million, but we're
Right.
saying it's 1,042,000.
Right.
And that's because that 1,042,000 is comparing column B and C, not the total up and down of differences.
Okay.
We'll get a review of that and explain why that difference is there. It is the correct math. It's just expressing two different numbers, and it isn't as logical as I think, or as understandable as the public should have.
Is
in
the
that
net
spreadsheet.
town assessment percentage still the same then? 22.77?
Yeah, and that's why it was done that, because that is the percentage it's up. That's the percent increase is 22.77. That
Okay.
line is correct, but it's
Okay.
showing a different comparison. So I
Thanks.
will update that.
So, thanks. So, I mean, the reason that matters to me is I just want to be sure that that 1,042,139 figure is correct, because that's the figure that shows me, we had asked staff if we could bring the operating expense increase down to something that was hopefully 7 at least. And we had asked that the mill increase, as I remember, to bring us a budget where there might be something that was less than, we were at 2 mill increase in the last version we saw. And we asked to see something that might be a 1 mill increase or a 1.5 mill increase to see some options. And I think at this 1,042,139, if that is the correct number, we're at a 1.3 mill increase with this budget over last year. So I just want to be rock solid that that 1,042,139 is the correct figure as council's having this discussion about tax impact. And we have the tax impact in numbers. In mills, it's about 1.3, if that's accurate. So you're convinced that the 1,042,139 is correct? Yes?
Comparing the correct line. So yes, that's the increase from 26 to 27.
So it's, you sort of split the difference then between the 1 mil, 1.5 mil. You're at instead of bringing us 2, you brought us 1 that's right in the middle, about 1.3.
Yeah, last year was 812. So I'll tell you real quick, it would be 42. 112,000. 1.28.
Okay, right about 1.3. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Dan, I might have another question later, but I'm more than happy to cede to other folks on general questions first.
Sure. Any general questions? Council Baker?
Yeah, don't know if this is general or not, but so on page 4 in the verbiage, it talks about reducing the use of the fund balance by, or the general fund balance by 50,000. But then on the final budget on page 13, it looks like we're using $450,000 of the general fund. Never mind, I just answered my own question.
I think you
Reduced by
saw it.
50.
Yep.
Yep,
Got it. Okay.
got it. God, I love questions like that. All right.
I love it even better.
And then another question is, we're budgeting for increased investment earnings on the revenue side. What return are we budgeting versus what we are currently getting? I couldn't figure that out.
So the revenue side, oh, shoot, is that going to be in my other version? I think it is in my other one. I got to open up a different. We did a 3-year review of all our revenues and saw what it was growing year to year to year. Then did a comparison based upon the 8 months that we had available through the end of February, and did a reanalyze projection. So what we looked at that is that assuming our balances stay the same and knowing that we are spending down fund balance next year, that those expenditures should happen late in the year. So we should continue to see the same rate of return on our interest in our bank accounts. What I didn't do was make any projection of what we think interest rates are going to change by. did some wrestling with whether we should or shouldn't and said, let's roll with a static percentage rather than changing it. It does show a greater revenue growth potential than what we've seen in years past, but it is below what we've actually received as performance in the recent years, past 3.
What
Okay,
line-
so we're budgeting a return that's lower than what we've received in the past 3 years. Did I understand that?
Lower than what we've
Okay.
received, but much more aggressive in the total return because there was a bigger cushion in years past. One of the reasons why I'm recommending using less fund balance, because it's probably going to grow by less next year.
Okay. And you don't know off the top of your head what that return is we're budgeting for?
I can look it up, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
This return on investments?
The checking account has a sweep rate that is variable, but I can get what this sweep rate was or exactly.
Yeah, and my assumption is it's not gonna make a big difference in the budget, but I'd rather be more
Mhm.
conservative in our budgeting than not.
Thanks.
All right. When we're talking about, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, you go first. I'll wait.
Okay, thanks. When we're talking about the salaries and benefits and things like that and increase there, what is does that include the safer positions and things like that that have been rolled into? And, and then it's just the one position in, water pollution control,
That would not be included in that
Not
number, seeing
that
as how it's an
piece, but-
enterprise fund. Yep.
but otherwise there are no new positions in the budget in terms of it's all, we're absorbing the full year cost of those 3 positions.
Yep.
And in the 26 budget, we had half of that.
1/3.
1/3.
Yep.
So, so we're absorbing those completely, and then we have just negotiated increases and
Yep.
our transitions to, I get the step, and I don't know if we've talked about that a lot publicly yet, but is that something that you?
So yeah, I can, so 2 things.
Yep.
I'll answer both. First is that we did do a change in regards to with the safer and the staff, that the 2/3, 1/3, we had $95,000 left over last year, which we put into a reserve fund. As it sits today, we don't feel we need that reserve fund. It was $95,000. We are planning on not using it in fiscal year 26 and using it in fiscal year 27. So that does slow that. It would be reutilized again. So of that money coming over for the safer positions, we did create a one-time reserve of 95,000. As it sits today, we don't think we'll need it by year end. It's going to be close. But if it does end that way, we want to hold it for 1 additional year and use it in the 27 budget. So that's part 1 to the safer side of that question. Part 2 is some of our union contracts are negotiated too. They're set, we're following them. Those were what were implemented. Fire department's in negotiations. We've put a guess in there along the lines of where we think we'll end up. But again, not early disclosing the process of our negotiations and how we're doing. It'll be maybe a month before we get that final number finally refined. Then on the staff side, last year, the charter indicates that the town manager is supposed to present a budget with a wage scale for all non-union employees. And I had one, and I gave you what you had, and it was not in complete compliance. It had we'd fallen out of whack because it had not been graduated. So there were some steps where people were off step or maybe not dead on step. And I worked with our HR consultant, Lori Bouchard, worked with senior staff to start. We went through and updated all positions. We have a brand new non-union wage scale. It's in the appendices if you want to look at it, for all positions in the town. That's what's budgeted. So we're assuming that scale is implemented. It is a combination of a step and a COLA for this year. We adopted a budget or wage scale that would take effect July 1. So it already has the included number for CPIW. We've recommended December. That would have been 2.57%. And that's the total average increase for all employees to get on step, so to speak. But some were behind, some were ahead. We worked it all out. Everybody got a raise.
And in terms of the revenue side and the state revenue sharing, and I felt, dumb luck, right? I got elected to the council in a time where we were getting $1 million increases in revenue sharing every year, and it kind of made these kinds of things a little easier. And I had the good fortune to get elected at the same time as Councilor Marks, who's a budget. She watches it like a hawk. I'm not going to say she's a budget hawk because that's a different connotation. That's like a coalition of people that maybe you don't want to associate with, but you watch it like a hawk, and I do appreciate that about you. So talk to us a little bit about why the $1 million increase every year in revenue sharing has come to an end and why we're getting less this year.
So the economy slowed, and there was a severe commitment post-COVID to increase the amount of money that went into revenue sharing. There are multiple factors that affect revenue sharing. It is a textbook explanations in here. It's based upon what's on the main revenue sharing website. It is a comparison of every community in your county, how fast they're growing in relation to how much they're spending to meet the demands. And then it's broken into revenue one and revenue two. Revenue one is fair, and it's just a flat amount of the revenue sharing that's distributed to each of the counties based upon their populations. And then each town gets a share based upon their population. Rev 2 takes into account of your population and the amount of spending you have. So if you spend more and you have a small population, you have a greater gap, and they give you more Rev 2. When it was originally adopted, it was premised on the idea that service center communities had more nonprofits and they had higher costs to operate. So it was a way to redistribute revenue sharing so that it was more equitable across the state. Orono happens to be in the high Rev 2 receiving community. In the past 3 years, a couple things have happened. One, your value's grown quicker than our counterparts, but your growth was slower leading into COVID. So it was kind of a little bit of a catch up. The other piece is going on is you are spending less for tax commitment. So when I talk to you about the 5.6 million in 22, becoming 4.2 and then 4.5, that shows less, I'm going to use a state word, need, because you don't have the demand on your local property tax base, which means you get a smaller share on the Rev 2 component. So we've lost a little bit because of that. You could lose all your hair chasing how to get the most out of revenue sharing 1 and 2. All puns intended. Bad dad joke allowed to the town manager once in a while, but in genuineness, it is very tough. You got to look at your spending and be careful. Right now, we're in a hiccup where we're growing a little bit quicker in the sense that our value caught up to some of the others after COVID. But our population's staying about where it is. Population's tough. It's really not, it's only examined closely once every 10 years during a census. And then they do some rough guessing in between there for census tracking data. That's what I talk about our long-term goals. We need 25 million or so a year of brand new value. 25 million times a mill rate of 20 will generate about $500,000 of additional capacity without any increases on your local taxpayers. If we had had that this year of new growth, not changes to values, but new growth, that would have been a great win for us, and that this would have offset a lot of these costs. You've had that in years past. Hotel Ursa, Tyler Technologies, a few years back was University Credit Union. You've had some good investments in those over the years, but again, I put some numbers to this. You're talking 300 to 500 houses, 30 to 50 a year. It's kind of where you could be, and you can sustain that. Comp plan justifies it that we can sustain that growth without a major demand on services because you have the service there to meet it. Will it change it? Of course. But schools, use the math based upon the current housing stock. They're generating about 1 student for every 5 residential homes. So if we gain 500 homes, you'd gain about 100 students. The comp plan suggested 100 new students come into the town of Orono living here. It's not perfect math, but it is based on sound presumptions. That's where we put it together. That's what I was recommending in those budgets. So that's how those pieces come together. Revenue sharing is tricky. As our value grows, we will see a change. But if all things stayed equal and all town values stayed the same, roughly 66% of your new value will be the loss of revenue sharing. So you would still gain a third. Your growth will offset that loss. Revenue sharing is not a penalty for growing. It just does shrink as you grow if it's not proportionate with your current population. I know that's a mouthful, and I'm going to pause there because there's an awful lot to it. And if I overcomplicated it, perfect, because that's about what it needs to be. Extremely complicated. It is not an easy topic.
Well, it's also, we increased the valuation and we're paying, when the good work that the town does to increase the valuation supports, the municipal tax burden in terms of, the schools and the county and, so there's some, that we're still, the town burden as it is on the mill rate is still going to be what? A third of, is that what we,
Yep, right around a third.
yeah,
Yep.
so.
We're 1/3. Yep.
Yeah.
And the county's about 1 million to 15 million. I can't do that one off the top of my
Okay.
head.
All right. Any more? Thank you for that. It's,
Yep.
Dan, I have
and
some
so-
general questions.
Yeah, but just do you foresee us having strategies on the revenue sharing, the state revenue sharing? I mean, I don't know if it's towns, if people are gaming it or what, it just seems like it's a formula
Yeah.
and what the inputs are and what the outputs are going to be. How do we advantage ourselves in the future for that kind of stuff?
It's hard to advantage it, and it's, I would say, next to impossible to game it,
Mhm.
because you'd have to know what every other community is doing in the entire state at the same year you are. And you don't know it until the state puts out the numbers in February. So can you make some good guesses because you're seeing unprecedented growth or shrinkage in your town itself? But again, you still don't know how you compare to the other 500 municipalities in the state of Maine. So you'd have to know what every single one of them are doing, and we're just not there yet. Who knows? With the use of AI, maybe we'll get there, but we're definitely not there yet. The strategies, when you look at the long-term strategy, I talk about revenue sharing, school subsidy, and county taxes. That $25 million growth number is taking that into account in a way that is balanced and cautious and not too much growth too fast.
So $25 million, and you talk about new growth. So not just the fact that, the assessor stopped by and,
No.
my taxes went up a little, my property value went up, but actually new, like, sticks in the ground.
New garage.
Yeah.
Brand new business, brand new house, brand new apartment building, new construction that never existed before. Or in some cases, if, a big permit to do a complete big addition, or tearing down an old home and replacing it with a new home that's worth twice as much. The difference would be new construction, but not just a increase of your assessed value.
And you think, I'm not going to hold you to it to the dollar, but you think $25 million is kind of the sweet spot for enough new valuation so that what it costs to deliver the services that the people of Orono have come to expect and appreciate?
Been here 21 months, and that's my best number right now, and I will refine that more in years to come, but that's where I'm sitting right now, saying that's a pretty good number. That is sustaining services, not growing. If it got bigger, it would be helpful. I would not want to see it get too large, meaning up over 50 million a year in 1 year. What's going on and why? That would start to put other strains in other places. How many miles of roads do we add at once? What type of housing stock? We're making some broad numbers to some very detailed issues. But again, generally speaking, based upon the way you grew, I mean, Hotel Ursa was 15 million, and I'm top of my head number, so don't quote me. But that value was worked really well in the cooperation with the university because it was on campus, had all the utilities on existing utilities. It's exactly where you want it. We didn't have to build out a lot more. We took advantage of what was already there. That again, your old comp plan talked about urban infill. That's why it was written that way. Don't expand your water and sewer. Put more housing stock where the people already live. That can be stressful to your community because sometimes people don't want neighbors. We will, and we're working through those. But again, high level numbers, with minimal public infrastructure investment needed, 25 million a year would be a great number.
Is that 71 new homes if there are 350,000? So what was the number you came up with?
That would be what, 30 to 50 houses a year? 30 to 50 houses a year.
50, by all means, do. I support that.
That's an aggressive number. We won't get there in
No.
1 year.
I can't hear
wouldn't-
who just
I
spoke.
wouldn't want to
Was
see
that
it do
Jacob?
more than that.
Yeah.
Jake's
Jacob.
being snarky again. Surprise, surprise.
I just have
Okay.
Yeah.
a quick,
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I know that we as a council have discussed this revenue sharing over a couple of years that I've been here, for those of us who've been here. And I know that revenue sharing is always going to be a political will, right, of Augusta. And so, and it depends on their budget, and it depends on the will of people that is a collective of the state. And I know some of us have been concerned about that either decreasing, which it has, or going away for us completely, which is kind of a shock. And I do think for me as a counselor, at the moment, I feel it's important for us to try to put ourselves in a position where we're not super dependent on the revenue sharing, just because it's not something that we have complete control over anyways. And so I'm definitely for seeing growth, even if it does, well managed, well thought out, well planned growth. So even if it does have a negative impact a little bit on the revenue sharing, because we don't know how long that's going to last. We don't know. What new government's coming, and so whenever we can put ourselves in a position to be self-contained, that's my understanding and my feeling on that issue. And so I'm happy that you're addressing that and you're putting that in the long-term goals. And yeah, I'm for that. This is just more of a philosophical from one counselor's position on it. And that's my understanding of this revenue sharing, is that it could disappear next year if a new a new government comes along in Augusta and just says, hey, we can't afford it, we don't want to do it, or what have you.
Okay. Anybody else? Sarah, you have more? Go ahead.
No one else has a hand up. I can't see. So,
Nope. They
okay.
did the discount double check thing and nobody, so.
Okay. Sorry. It's strange being on the screen always.
I know it is strange. I've done it a couple times. It's hard.
Yeah. And yeah, Clint, I really wanted to thank you also for the long range thinking on that. Gosh, I seriously hope that Augusta never chooses to get rid of it completely, because we'd be in big, big trouble. But I do think that it goes up and down based on economic situations in the state. And I appreciate the thinking of how to not be quite as dependent on it as we are, because it has been about a third, correct, of our income, our revenue over at this point.
Of all revenue, it's half this year of all
Yeah.
town revenue. So,
Yeah, town. Yeah. So it's a very high percentage. And so I appreciate the thoughtfulness about the kind of growth that would be reasonable, that wouldn't create the need for significant staffing, because obviously then costs would go significantly up. I appreciated your comments that within our current staffing model, you foresee that kind of growth being reasonable and possible. I'm excited that we have a comp plan in place, a new one now, because I feel like that positions us better to begin really working on that. I wanted to just sort of highlight for a minute, if we look at the cost center page in the early document, I think that is maybe, I don't know if it's 15 or 14 on your screen, Clint. I appreciate this document a lot. It was incredibly, I know I asked for a few tweaks that really helped for me, but it really is a great document to take a look at, where our expense growth is coming from. As Clint eloquently pointed out, it really is pretty much entirely wages, benefits, workers' compensation, which are non-discretionary increases. We don't have any control over those as a council, unless we didn't fill perhaps open positions, which I guess I do want to talk about in a little bit. We have some open positions, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. I just think it's important for us to understand how much of our growth right now is very constrained. Staff have done an incredible job on looking so carefully at everything else. If you look through this on cost center by cost center, there's virtually no significant growth happening anywhere outside of that category. I did want to mention on the safer question Dan asked, just to be sure that I'm clearly understanding. Clint, my understanding on that is because we're rolling that 95,000 reserve fund into this year's budget. To answer Dan's question, I don't think we are fully funding the 3 safer positions this year. This budget had us funding 2/3 of them, correct? Last year it was 1/3. This year we would essentially be funding 2/3 on the operating side, because 95% is that one-time reserve. So we should expect next year there'll be another bump up to take up the last third, correct?
Net, would be my answer, just in that this year does represent the first year that 100% of all the expenses are in the general fund budget. Last year, some of their costs were in the grant budget because
Yeah.
the SAFER was a grant line in a different fund. But yes, you are correct. The 95,000 would be about a third. Easy math. Yep.
It's a one-time
Well-
payment though, so we ought to expect that next year we don't have a $95,000 reserve. So we should expect it's gonna have to come from somewhere else next year, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Does
Like
that,
a hawk. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, nice job.
sorry. Then I just wanted to talk FTEs for a minute. I had noticed in the original version of the budget, we got the WPCF request to perhaps increase in FTE. And I do believe that it's important to note that, as I understand it, they were decreased in FTE before I came on council, I believe. And as I understood it in my tour anyway, kind of in a situation where it had been told to them that that was a temporary thing that would hopefully be coming back. So that funding would be completely out of the existing increases, correct? There'd be no further increase to the rate needed to fund that position at WPCF, Clint. Just the 5% that's already been planned over 3 years would fully fund that. Is that correct?
So I'm going to be careful to answer the history because I would want Chris to repeat. So, because I think there is a timing of FTE equivalents in the up and down. I just
Yeah.
don't know I have all the dates and years of when those happen. But yes, that increase is built in. If the budget passed, they have the capacity to add one full-time equivalent in the budget as presented in front of you. I'd like to spend more time with the department talking about that, the if, the how, and when. But it is built this year and presented as such that they would have one additional full-time equivalent going from 5 to 6.
Okay. And then I do think it's probably important to note also, and you can see it in the cost center, I think also, there has been an FTE increase this year apart from that. But I believe that that's because we approved as a council in the middle of the year last year, the creation of, I'm going to get the title wrong, EJ's new role, which is the economic development, is it manager now? I'm not sure I have the title exactly correct, but that is a change that happened this year, correct?
Yes, and
And
that
I-
was correct.
We
Thank you for
voted on
clarifying.
that, and I just want to say out loud, I think that it is important if we're looking to say that the solution around rev share is economic growth for the town. It doesn't personally to me make sense to consider taking that position away, which had existed in the past, and been taken away and was essentially put back. So anyway, I just want to point out though that for anyone listening, there is that FTE, and for the rest of council, that is another FTE changed since the last budget we saw. Although it's not a new position being asked for because it was asked for in the middle of this year. Correct, Clint?
Correct.
Okay. So the only FTE changes would be that economic development position and perhaps WPCF. There are also, I think in your budget, it said 9 currently vacant positions. And I began looking at what those were today. I have a feeling that probably most of them are utterly required to be filled. I can't imagine how we would function without assessor, or is it a code enforcement that currently is vacant. But I guess I do want to say in a budget where everything is pretty much coming from wage and benefit and workman's comp growth, and we do have 9 positions currently vacant, and it's a tough budget year. I mean, it's a year where we're growing a lot on the budget size and having a, potentially 1.3-ish mil impact on the taxpayer. And where we know that what we're hearing from the schools is that they are also expecting an increase. I guess I would love us as a council to have a detailed discussion about what those vacant positions are. And I do think there's sometimes a difference between absolutely needed versus wanted in positions, as we've talked about them over time. I know we added one into the clerk's office very recently, and I know it had really good reason I voted for it. And I also know that we did function without that position for a long time. So I guess I would like us as a council to have a discussion about those 9 open spots, perhaps at our next meeting. And I'm curious if the rest of council is at all interested. I'm assuming staff wouldn't feel ready to address that tonight. And I suspect in the end, I will think that most of them need to be filled. But it's a tight year. It's a hard year, and how much is going to be passed on to the taxpayers. And it feels like the right thing to do to me to at least take a look at them carefully as we're in this budget process. That's, I guess, all I have there.
Right.
Um,
Thanks, Sarah. It's a tough topic, and you're raising it with a lot of, you're raising it carefully, and we appreciate that. And I think, that is a conversation we'll have. I don't know that it's something we should be positioned to do tonight, but if we could get information for the next time that we talk. And I know that some of these positions it's changing. Jobs have been posted and things are changing on a regular basis. So that's kind of a challenge too, right? It's a dynamic environment in terms of filling the spots. And I went into the clerk's office today in the front office, and Shelley was all by herself. And I know help's on the way, and I'm glad that help's on the way. So, but it's a tough conversation to have, but it's certainly one we can have.
Yeah, fully agreed. I'm appreciating how hard Shelley's life must be right now, and I'm certainly not suggesting we don't need to fill. I just think I'm not sure if we have to fill every single one. I don't know yet. I don't have that data, but I do feel like it might be worth a discussion. And I guess the last big picture kinds of questions I have for you, Clint, are related also again to this sort of wage and benefit and workman's comp growth. The Appendix 3, if it were possible to pull that up, which talks about inflation and cost of living increases over time.
Yep. Cody, can you scroll? It's page 60. He grabbed that. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, when you look to it, they'll scroll to it, but yeah, is there a specific question? Do you want me to talk about it generally?
Yeah, I think I do have I guess a specific question. I don't know if my fellow counselors have looked at this at all. I thought it was a really, really helpful document, and I'm so grateful to staff for giving it to us. For a long time, I feel like we've talked around about inflation and what inflation has been doing versus our COLAs over the years. And if this was here last year, I missed it. Maybe it was. But I was certainly really grateful to see it this year. It helped me a lot to understand if we are keeping up on inflation. And Clint, my first question is the inflation number here, this is flat inflation, because what I'm looking at here is COLAs, not COLAs and step increases, right? So I'm literally comparing here inflation that the public experiences, everybody in any job anywhere, to like COLA, cost of living increases we've been giving to our staff members over time, correct?
Yes,
It's not like,
the steps would not, stepping is not inclusive of the COLA.
and likewise, we're not looking at CPI, whatever the one is that includes looks at wage growth, because wage growth includes step increases. And so we're looking really at just CPI inflation versus COLA increases.
The only thing I'd say in the top, the inflation line, I believe you use the Northeast All Urban. I didn't get a chance to track back all the ones that were used there. So the non-union COLA represents what was actually done in those years.
Yeah.
So like when you look in the calendar year 26, this budget's proposing a 2.57. That was the CPIW as of December. That's where we put that number from. It's not yet in the adopted budget for fiscal year 27, but it is where we started from.
But the inflation number at the top is just CPI. It's not CPIW.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So I just think this is important too, as we're looking, because I always want to be sure that we're not, treating our staff badly and expecting them to be doing more for less money. And, that would not be ethically okay. And when I look at these numbers, I know that these interest numbers compound, but without compounding them over the years, if I add the inflation numbers across the top for all these years, I get a figure of 30% when I add those all together. I do fully understand they would compound, and Jacob could write the formula that would get me the exact figure, but at a minimum, it's 30. And I look at our non-union employees and I add those numbers up, and they're coming in at around 26. So, that might not have exactly kept up, which worries me a bit. I also see the reverse when I then look at the MAP OPA COLAs and the IAFF COLAs. Those have gone up way beyond inflation. So when I add the MAP numbers those are at 56 and the IAFF is at 86. So those are way beyond 30. And I guess I'm a bit curious. I know we were told that our wages had to come up to neighboring towns, and I understand that we might needed therefore to have done that. But this is showing me just COLA numbers, not other parts of wage growth. So I don't know. I'm looking at this and it looks like cost of living increases to some of the unions way beyond inflation, and then perhaps to our non-union employees not at inflation. Can you speak to that, Clint?
Yeah, yes, love to. So it's for the non-union, I mean, again, a lot of times what most municipalities do as a non-union is just a CPI. And then what usually ends up happening is you got to make an adjustment because you fall behind. I believe that happened here before I got here. So some of that's maybe a bad tradition for the non-unions, which is something that we believe we've addressed with this year's wage scale so that at least understands that steps and COLA should be considered. Never a guarantee on any of it, but it's at least a consideration. As far as when you get into the ASME's new, that's your newly formed union. That represents the library, front office, Parks and Rec, code. Oh, sorry, not code, but parts of the code office, but not all of the code office, parts of finance, but not the entire finance office. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of about 11 positions that are governed. IAFF is your fire department. MAP is your police department. I did leave the profession for the better part of a decade. I know when I was negotiating these contracts in the early 2000s and teens, that there was a constant feeling that those positions were underfunded in comparison to others. In recent years, especially post-COVID, it's been hard to attract people in those roles, and wage scales have grown greatly, and other communities are adjusting quickly to attract talent. One of those unions has had a vacancy since before I started as your employee and still can't fill it, and has tried very well on multiple occasions with some great candidates, but just for a variety of reasons, didn't end up working. So it is a consistent issue to attract people at those rates of pay. There were markers, without comparing to any other positions in the past, that people in those positions were paid less or equivalent to other fields in the municipal government world. They're now in excess of those. It's a correction. Is it the right correction? I leave that up to councilors and the public to determine. But right now, our wage scales are trying to be maintained competitive so as we can fill the vacant positions we have. But yes, they are, if you compared those two unions to the non-union, they did grow at a much greater rate over those
Yeah.
same years.
Okay, thanks. I think, what's important for me is just to, I believe that we've taken actions as council and you have as a manager over the last years to be sure that everything's in a good competitive range at this point. And to me, this also helped to answer, like, we have certainly way more than kept up with what's happening on inflation. And I think that's important for us to note too. And I think those are my only big picture questions, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, nice job. Good questions. Okay, are we ready to turn to, staff's been with us an hour now after a long day. So, do we want to bring people up to the podium, or do we want to just call up as needed? What page do we start on? We start on page, community development is item A. And what page does that start on? For the breakdown?
Hopefully they're in order.
Yep.
Thank you.
26. Rob on the spot. All right, so page 26, and let's talk community development. Sorry, I'm scrolling. So do we want to have people come up, or do we want to, does anybody have? Yep. Well, I'm not going to call someone up just to, if someone doesn't have a specific question about community. All right, good. Let's do it. Let's, could we have the community development team come up? Introduce yourself. Apparently you got questions, Stan. You're going to be called into account or face some very softball questions. hope.
Mitch Stone, Assistant Town Manager, and I'm glad that EJ's with me because he can answer all the questions.
EJ Roach, Planning and Economic Development. Mitch started this process at the beginning of the year, so glad he's here to answer the questions I don't know.
Jesus.
Hot potato.
Obfuscation. All right, what do we got? Andrea, you want to go first?
Um, can you tell me if the proposed budget that we're looking at are, have you included all of the items that are essential for the operation of your department? If not, what would you like us to see considered? And are there items that are included that could be potentially put off for a year to allow for other items to be included?
Yeah, the biggest chunk of the budget this year is geared towards training, considering, well, all of us in the department, the longest standing employee has worked here less than a year. So we're trying to spend a lot of our time and resources on training and getting everybody up to speed. So any additional sort of big picture wish list items were actually not included this year. We're trying to get through the year, get everybody up to speed, focus on the projects that we think we can maximize our time and get the most kind of return on our investment. So that's why you'll see things like the downtown committee and those things that really tie back to the comprehensive plan. So those are kind of, this year's kind of a transition year with me being new and Maddie, and then trying to fill, we have to fill the code position now. So we're being okay. So I don't think there are things we'd like to add, but I don't want to add them just to add them. I'm not going to put a line item and say, hey, hope we can get to that. This year is a very specific, let's get up to speed. And then that being said, in the same sentence, there's not a lot we could cut because there's not a lot of things we put in that are kind of discretionary.
So I would just add that community development spans economic development, planning, assessing, and code. In that budget, it is very, I guess I would say, bare bones. I mean, we have always operated the code office on a response type thing, not a proactive, but a reactive. You will see in there some changes. We have reallocated some wages from our community policing liaison to code enforcement. It was a business that was in the economic development stuff, but really what they're doing is more code focused. There is also a report that talks a little bit about about our code department and needs the code department. I think that's probably a place that we are trying to figure out the best way forward with the amount of work they have and being able to, when we talk about $25 million worth of new value, that means somebody's got to go inspect and do all those things. So looking at what that future brings in a thoughtful way. I think EJ hit the nail on the head, is that we've got to walk through this at a reasonable pace here because we have new people and we have new things. I mean, with EJ's position, EJ replaced kind of two pieces. And so he's learning that planning side too. We still have we have the comprehensive plan that's going to need to be implemented. And there's some money that has been put in there in terms of how to do that with some consulting work. So there is, I think it's right-sized for what we think we're capable of at this point more than anything. So I don't think there's anything extra, but I think those are points that we need to be looking at in the future with the code department. I don't know if Clint wants to add anything to the
I think great clarification. I think they hit it well. Planning and code are thin. And there's a report on the code side that proves it. But that's things that we're willing to try and manage it this way. The planning side, we put a little bit of money in there. But again, it's around the comp plan implementation. State law changes are happening rapidly. We've got a lot of work to do on our ordinances to get these all in. Would love to have more, but we took it to as close as we could. And then part of this is also, and you talk a little bit, but we do have another increase that we received on Friday that's not here regarding transportation.
Yeah, we just received the transit, so the bus, both the Blackbird Express, which is the local one, and the Community Connector, which is the regional one. Those are both going up significantly. We just got that right before this came out, so you're going to see that. And we think that that is a significant part of how we do business here and how people commute through our community. So it is an increase. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it is an increase, and it's not insignificant. So
Sure.
When you brought up that, the cost for the Black Bear Express and the commuter, is there an option of looking at alternate routes to try and help corner that gas cost a little bit? Or are we gonna wait and see what happens with gas prices?
So, I mean, I don't know how much of it has to do with gas prices, how much of it has to do with wage. One of the challenges they've had is service. They had reduced service down and weren't doing it on the weekends. I'm not sure if it's back yet or not. And so I think part of the increase is trying to get more drivers to be able to do that. I'm not sure how in tune they are on the gas, whether they went heavy on increasing that because of today or whether they've really looked at. But in the past, that challenge has really been around the drivers. The community connector, both of them have been whittled down to pretty precise routes. And now with the fixed routes, it's even gotten better. So they're not stopping all the time. They're stopping at fixed routes. So that changes that dynamic and have kind of dialed that in a bit. So.
John?
Do we share that with the university, particularly with like the Black Bear Express?
So the Black Bear Express is shared with the university, and there are also a couple of the Avenue and Orchard Trails both contribute as well. And then the regular route, we all kind of have a different share of that throughout the region, and the university does pay into that as well.
Okay. Are you open to having a dashboard on your website showing the valuation, like a little thing, the temperature going up? Okay.
It's on my wall. You can come into my office. I'll have a webcam that shows every dollar value we add towards that 25 million.
I'll be by every Monday to check, and I'll report on it in the council, in the chair's report in the council meetings. But no, it's a big number, and we ought to think about, got to be thinking about that in terms of what we're investing into. So, Sarah?
No, I love that. That was a similar kind of question I was going to ask. Again, really appreciative of what hard work it's going to take to, meet those goals. I did want to, just as maybe more a Clint question, but Clint, this is a place where on the FTE count, I would really love it if we could make it a practice to indicate when an FTE number changed in the middle of a fiscal year, because this FTE number, I'm pretty sure in the last budget was not 3. And it is now. So that growth shows later in an appendix clearly, but I think it would be good practice to be able to indicate in a parentheses like this increased in the middle of FY26, just so we're not losing track of where that happens. Thanks.
So Sarah, the only thing I would add to that is just to be clear for everybody is that although we have added an FTE, there was a consultant filling that role. So it wasn't like we weren't paying somebody to do the work. So
the planning part, correct?
Yep.
The planning,
Yep.
which was 0.4, but is it not also correct that 0.6 of that was you were filling in for that role simultaneously with your assistant manager job, which was way too much for one human? So I do think we added a 0.6 in there, and it does show, I think, from year to year as a full one, and part of it is the 0.4 that was contracted, but I think part of it was an actual position added mid-year.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Anything else on community development? Yep. Thanks for all you do. All right, next up, could we have Parks and Recreation? We're going to talk about the kiddie. You tell her we're going to talk about the kiddie pool at our next meeting? Good.
Hi, everyone. Megan Mazzella, Parks and Recreation Director.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you all?
Good. Thanks for being here. Thanks for looking at the bridge out behind our house. I appreciate that. Anybody, you want to, Andrea, that was a great kind of overarching question. You want to lead with that again, or?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to be
Councilor
asking
Hardison.
all of you that same question. Do the items in your budget have what you need that are essential items? Are there things that are not included that you would like us to consider if we could? And what items are included that could potentially be put off so that something else could be done?
I think the biggest change you'll see in the Parks and Rec budget is within a lot of the maintenance lines in those areas. I've increased the maintenance lines pretty significantly in relevance to my budget. We often in Parks and Rec think about what can be delayed or think about what can be strung together to the best of our ability or when to defer maintenance. This budget represents some more proactivity in that sense and to catch up on maybe some of the things that were delayed or strategically maintenanced in a way that sustains us year to year. So if you're asking me where to remove, those lines in theory could return to a similar rate as you've seen them in years past. But like I said, that is an effort to be more proactive and more diligent on some of our maintenance efforts.
So your maintenance line, is that broken down in here?
So I brought it with me.
Sorry, I don't mean
No.
to, this is, I promise I'm not trying to, no gotcha for anybody, and we could always get it later.
No, I do have it in front of me. Buildings and the repair maintenance. I have a printed out piece, but the line is 50, 675, 37. There is a $6,000 increase there. That maintenance line does all of our parks. And so that's including benches, that includes chips for the playground, that includes the playground equipment itself breaking. I know that has come up a few times in my budget meetings throughout the years. One of those pieces ranges between $500 and $1,000 to fix a part of the playground. So that gets eaten up very quickly. So that is the big increase there you see in that maintenance line.
Okay.
Trails maintenance has sustained us for a few years. You're not going to see an increase there. There's also a trails reserve. So we're pretty good about spending the money we have fiscally and then saving that reserve for larger projects.
Okay.
I have a printed out version. I'm looking at page 36, but it is within the kind of the nitty gritty Parks and Rec breakdown there.
Okay. Good. Any other questions, Jacob?
Festival Days now lives with you? Perfect.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you've rolled in the cost of that too. Okay.
Correct.
It's the summaries seem to indicate that. So
Yep. So Jacob's looking at the community arts line, which is on the next page, page 37, code 5050, 690, 651. We had $2,000 for supporting arts activities in the town in the history of that line, but you'll see the increase for the festival day as well as the contract for the Orono Arts Fest. That payment lives in that line as well at this point.
You got enough in there for the town council dunk tank?
Sure.
All right. That's all I needed to know. But the kiddie pool we're going to talk about next time. Anybody have anything else for Megan?
I do.
You good? Yeah. Hey, go, Sarah.
Hey.
Sarah, go
Thanks,
ahead.
Megan.
Sorry.
Thank you. I wanted to highlight how much I appreciated the clocking of all the volunteer hours. And I think it's really a great shout out to all the folks in our community who volunteer. And, you know, it's practically a full-time position we'd be funding without all those volunteers in Parks and Rec. So it's great to see that. I also just wanted to ask you and or Clint, I know it was highlighted a few times, this new cost sharing or with the after school program with the university. And I understand that's a wash financially. It sounded like whatever we're not taking in, we're also not spending out. But I think that's what I understood. But I just wanted some clarity about that. And if I'm correct, that that's just a wash, we're not gaining or losing any money that way. And then also why we made that change.
Sure. So a little history on the after school program. When we started the after school program, it was in September and the school year had already started. There was an after school program in Old Town that closed and it was a bit reactionary. We prepared at the time for after school to be a subsidized program because we did not know how many students were going to register for the program. So we needed to ensure the staff costs. You used to see that represented in the 5054 lines of the Parks and Rec budget. And that included the direct payment of staff as well as an admin fee for some of the overseement from the university side of that contract. after school has changed. You've heard that it's grown every single year. We've had some conversations at the council level about it. It can sustain itself at this point with the amount of kids and the way we have structured staff there. So we have changed it to a revenue sharing. Rad Camp, the summer program, is also in a similar situation with that contract. The program just no longer needs to be subsidized. It can sustain itself. So we've moved it to a model that matches some of our other relationships with them.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? John?
Kind of along those lines, and maybe this is big picture, but are there, what would you describe as like the limitations to potentially like more revenue generating programs, you know, as separate from events?
Separate from events. So when you're adding more revenue generated programs, are you talking about more of our youth
When we're
programs,
doing,
like our
yeah,
soccer,
when we're doing things
basketball?
like youth sports, when we're doing things like camps, after school programs?
Sure. So right now that limitation is, I would say, more closely tied to staff. The other limitation that we run into, even if I had 15 full-time staff members, is you do run out of participants. There are only so many kids in this area, and if there are 15 things going on a Monday night, all of those kids cannot participate. It sounds a little bit funny, but you do run into the fact that there's only so many kids, if you will, you're pooling from. So I guess the next question would then be, well, there's more people than just kids in this town. We could look at those types of things. We do have some senior programming. It is limited and it doesn't cost the seniors that participate in those programs anything. As the Parks and Rec director, I have not heard from the community a big push for, say, adult or other styles of programming. In terms of middle school and high school ages, there is so much going on at the schools. Again, I run into that competing element. So oftentimes I get no participation or get concerned that a school's program might not be as successful due to that competitiveness. So that would be something that I would want to hear more from the community. So if there is something that is lacking for a different age group or a different population, that would be, you know, something we could continue to discuss and look at how to fill those gaps. Yes, Matt?
I know that at one point there was issues, and I can't remember if it was like before school programming or after school programming with actual just like raw space to hold people and things. Is that still an issue, or has that been resolved? And if it is an issue, is that something that we need to start looking long term at how to resolve that with building space and maybe even part of the budget to start building on funds because I think that that's going to always be a high need and will continue to become even greater need if we want to attract families to this town.
So right now we operate, most of our programs are within the school. As some of you know, the school also competes for its own space. So after school, we have a really good relationship with the school for after school, and we've made some adjustments within that relationship to support a larger after school program. We are currently not full on after school, where I think this time last year we were having a completely different conversation. But the school had heard that too and adjusted with us, and we worked together to make that work. Right now, there's not a limitation on something like basketball or something like soccer. Field space isn't typically my issue, it's indoor space. So it's hard to say, like, let's do if we were to do an adult league, well, that league would then have to compete with the existing youth programming and all the programming that the school hosts within their own gyms. So that schedule gets very tight to add into. But for our current programs, there is not an issue.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Anything else for Parks and Rec? Great. Thank you so much. Next up, we have the library.
Lori Carpenter, Library Director.
Thanks for
And
joining us.
should I start, Andrea, with your
Yep.
question? I think when we're looking at what we will need, we're looking towards the future. So when we look at the expansion, that's twice the size of what we have right now. And adding staff is what we're hoping for in the future. Right now, we're pretty much holding steady. If you look at my budget, there's a lot of 0% that we have increased. And at this point, we're doing pretty well. You'll see also that there has been some major increases over the past few years in digital content, and that is becoming more of a demand from the community. We have a number of different services that we offer for digital content, downloadable audios and ebooks, as well as movies and magazines, et cetera. So there are different formats, different ways of offering that. And it has, we're holding steady right now, and it seems like it's serving the needs of the community. I don't see right now anywhere we could cut back without going into the negative. So I guess that's where we are at this point. When we are expanded, there may be some places that we will need to increase. And we haven't really identified those other than facilities. So that will be an increase also.
How do you balance the expansion is so exciting, and thank you so much for your
Yeah.
work to, bring that. It's just a crowning achievement, I think, for the folks at the library and particularly for you with your leadership. But when you think about, we talk about this $25 million in valuation, it strikes me that if we want to do more to year in and year out, limit the impact on the property taxpayer to the cost of delivering the services that the property taxpayers value, we either have to add that value, we either have to find ways to generate revenue, or we need to find savings through collaboration. And I like that we're thinking in a big picture way about that. And do you think there are, and I think I'll ask this of everybody eventually, but as you look at since your project is so, exciting, are there things that you think about in terms of, I think intangibly it adds value because people want to live in a community with the assets like the library that we have and that we're going to have. But that's not, you can't put that in a budget line,
Right.
Zach, maybe creative, it'd be creative accounting if you were to. But in terms of generating revenue or savings through collaborations, do you think at all about those opportunities down the road as you come back to us for, a real need for more staff or other resources to offset the.
Yeah, so Clint and I have had conversations about it. As you know, we're doubling the space.
Mhm.
We are getting a much larger community room as well as a meeting room and a tutoring room, and looking at that as possible revenue. We haven't come up with a policy yet. Certainly, we would want to still offer those spaces for free for library programs, of course, town programs, or nonprofits. But there were, they say if you build it, they'll come.
Right.
And I think businesses will be looking at our space as one that could really benefit them. So we're looking at ways that we could bring in some revenue. Now, as a public library, we just don't have that much opportunity
Yeah.
to bring in that revenue. So we're trying to be creative. We certainly cannot charge the community for library services or materials because they're already paying for it in their
Right.
taxes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of out of the picture. I'm interested in creative, ways of doing that, but I haven't come up with them yet.
Yeah. It's interesting, needle to have to thread, because there's in no way, if you come before us and say, hey, we've got this idea to charge people for something they already come to expect from the library, you're not going to get a lot of traction.
Right.
You know what? So it's hard for us to both ask you for that, and then we're not going to be particularly receptive to some things as well. So it is creative, and I do think that
Yeah.
you and the manager thinking about it as you move ahead, it's
I do think that many people come to communities for those non-mandated services.
right.
Library and Parks and Rec. If they think that the community is offering some of those frills, or just non-mandated services, they think they're going to get a great community. And I think they're right.
Yep.
We've seen many families come to this community and come to the library first, not when they move here, but when they're thinking of moving
Yep.
here. We've heard anecdotally, families saying, well, I compared Bangor, Orono, and Hamden, and Orono was the one we picked. So maybe there are those who ended up in Hamden who will say the same thing, but I do think they look at those non-mandated services as kind of icing on the cake.
Yeah, there's a lot of value there. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Sarah?
Yeah, I've got one. Thanks, Lori. I think my
Sure.
question is a little bit maybe similar to Dan's in some ways in thinking about where the library does have perhaps ability to offset cost, which I don't think is probably mostly for fee products. But looking at the Parks and Rec above made me realize, we haven't seen a chart on volunteerism at the library, but I know there's a lot of it. I know there's a lot of people in
There is.
town that volunteer there. And we certainly know from our meetings on the library funding and the incredible excitement in Orono always about everything that has to do with our library, whether it's, programming or the expansion. So I guess my question to you is, as we move forward, are there ways to really leverage and increase that volunteerism even more and to give and really put out to the community that there are opportunities to volunteer here and that this new wonderful library does come with expanding staffing needs? I understand that some of that may require a trained librarian, but I would suspect that some of it also is supervision of space and reshelving of double amounts of books and things that I do imagine that in some ways volunteers could assist with. So I guess I was curious, is that in your planning to be thinking about how to leverage that as we move forward? And I hope it is, because I think it actually makes our library, it's one of the things I love the most about our library is not just how amazing our staff is and our space and programs, but also how much it involves the community together. And I think that's also a value for everyone who volunteers there. Actually, that's a value. It's a gift to participate in volunteering and build community that way, the same way that it's a gift to us as a town that people volunteer their time and then, we don't have to hire more staff. So could you speak at all to the volunteering aspect and how you might leverage that as this moves forward?
Sure. I will say when we moved from the high school to the current facility, we went from one regular volunteer to about 10 for the weekly tasks. They do shelve books. They take care of the delivery, both going in and out every day. So yes, you build a brand new facility and people want to be there. They want to be a part of it. So I anticipate that happening again. At the same time, when we moved into the new facility in 2009, we actually our budget was reduced and our staff was reduced. So we ended up closing one day a week. And I used that as a way of saying, we need you volunteers to help in order to get the work done because we've just lost a staff member. Hopefully that doesn't happen this time, but we will have plenty for volunteers to do. And I will say that they do feel ownership over their work there and being part of it. So in addition to those, I think it's around 10 that are there on a daily basis every week. We also have the Board of Trustees, the Foundation Board, and the Friends of the Library. And off the top of my head, that maybe represents 15 to 20 people. Actually, we do a volunteer recognition every year, and you'll see it in the budget that it goes under adult programming. I think we counted 52 people that have either worked every week on a board or for special events. So certainly I haven't really thought about how to leverage it even more, but I do think once we have this new beautiful expansion, people will come forward and want to be part of it.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Lori.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate it. Let's get Zach and Cody up here next. Or are you going to take this one? General government. So we got general government, town manager, finance, town clerk, community engagement.
I can start us off with the essential question.
I thought they didn't feel like they summoned them just now. No,
Oh, they can come up.
I don't care.
Come on up and join us.
And we got
But
Shelley. They're the ones I like to give the hardest time to.
I mean, this one is by far the most unfunded and underfunded department of the town. No,
Most appreciated. No.
no, I mean, again, I think, within this team, and I'll let them speak of some of the others, we're making moves. There's some things here we've discussed about staff sizes up, down, where they are. I've looked at the region, and when you look at the town manager's office, one of the biggest shortfalls I always see is human resources. HR staff of 85 plus volunteers, we're low. I mean, there's just no way to say it any other way. Private sector businesses would have 2 to 2.5 employees for the same number of staff members we have. We have 3 between Mitch, me, and Amanda doing the HR work. So, I mean, and we do all the other things as well. So that's the one area I would say is our biggest weakness. If there was more resources available, it would be in one of the many areas that I would look to across multiple departments. But that's one I would share out as a need. As far as things that are extra that we could change, you know, we're funding quite a bit of this through the TIF districts. I think those need to keep growing. And I think that makes that model sustainable. Town clerk, community engagement, finance, we've reworked an awful lot what we're doing there. Finance staff is up slightly. But I will say that when you compare us out to neighboring communities of similar size, we're at or less the number of employees they have in those same positions. Community engagement, you know, it's, you know, when you look at what's going to make your community grow, and Cody works with every department here to meet with them, promote us and push us forward in an ever-changing environment of what it takes to market a community. Community engagement director, I think, is highly needed. It does say IT/ at the end. He does have a contracted service, but again, as we grow into what we do, you know, a lot of that ends up falling to Mitch quite a bit as well. Plug myself, I recently learned how to lock and unlock the door. So I've expanded my capabilities recently as well. You know, and Shelley, I'll let Shelley talk a little bit if you want to ask her some questions on the essential things of the town clerk's office. She does such a great job, but I'll let them kick in for anything to add to that. That's my broad,
Sure.
general government analysis.
Do you want to, anything up Andrea's question, I guess, is kind of a entryway into anything you want to share with us?
Sure, I can start.
Yep.
So we're keeping it fairly flat this year in the finance part. Zach Tarkin, finance director, by the way. So we are kind of focusing internal. We have been for the past few years. We're a pretty new department. This all of us with about 2 years in our roles now. Rashane has hit his 1-year anniversary. So we got some feedback from the auditors on some processes we need to tighten up. And one of our focuses is kind of just maximizing the use of the softwares that we have available, Trio, ADP, trying to integrate some AI in there to try and streamline some things while keeping our costs low. I'd say maybe one weakness is we're all kind of new. There's a lot of internal training we're working towards, which wears me a little thin sometimes. It's hard to teach and to do and keep everything moving. But overall, we're doing really well. So we're in a good spot. We're building a really good team, and I feel like we're doing well.
Now, is this the first time that you've had a manager for 2 budgets in a row? The same
It might
manager?
be.
What's that?
It might be.
Yep. So, you know, we're happy about that, I think.
Me too.
So, yeah. I think you've grown. It's been fun to watch you kind of grow in the role, and this is a tough process, and you do a very good job at it. So I'm really excited about just watching your progress as a member of the team. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Zach? Did we lose Sarah?
I'm
There
still
she
here.
is.
No questions.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, great. All right, Cody?
Hello, Cody Viggu, Community Engagement Director. Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate on a simple side of things as far as budget goes and staffing. So 1.5 years in or so, and I like how the way things are going and collaborating with everyone back here has been great. So it's kind of where I've been at, what Clint said.
Anyone for Cody? Got a good Orono spirit. It comes across in the posts and things like that. So
I appreciate it.
Yep. Shelley, noticed you were late today, but I noticed you were also the only person in your office today.
Yeah, I was closing down the office,
Yep,
making
thank
sure
you.
we could
Yep.
hit deposit. Shelley Crosby, Town Clerk. So as you all know, we are in the middle of transition. If I had spoken to you a month ago, I probably would have said that with the addition of the new person at the front counter, we were humming really well. We were actually starting to deep dive into all areas of the clerk's office to identify any rooms for improvement and or to put into place efficient steps for seeing growth and succession planning. But with the vacancy of my staff that I've now experienced, I am in the process of going back to ground zero, so to speak, and building a team. Fortunately for me, I have got 2 people who are interested in joining us and have accepted positions. They do bring with them municipal experience. And so I do see that I am going back to ground zero, but I think with a little bit of surface training, we should be back up and humming again. As far as the clerk's budget, we kept things as stable as we could across all the lines. The elections budget goes up and down depending on what type of an election it is. And I will say that all of the state agencies, including the Secretary of State's office, are in the process of implementing new software, new technology using AI, and trying to also look at consolidation of service across the entire state. What that has done for clerks' offices throughout Maine is we are having to learn new equipment, we're having to learn new software, and so that is seeing budgets kind of get stretched a little bit. And the best example I can give you is Secretary of State told us to prepare for a 25% increase in just our elections budget alone. Now, when I took those numbers and I recalculated them and evaluated our current offerings and our staffing, I was able to spread that 25% across lines, taking into account how many enrollments we would probably have in voter reg. So my elections budget came in around 15% rather than what the state had said for us to brace for. GA is staying solid. One of our individuals who was recently hired is bringing with her GA experience. So I am thrilled that that will be a backup and that will help with our succession planning goals. The third position, I know that there is some consideration on the table of evaluating everything, and this is not a plug certainly to just focus on my department, but with that third position, as I said, we are able to look at all of our processes and look at gaps in efficiency. The best thing that I could point to is if you were to look at like motor vehicle, excise tax, or were to look at the business licensing and some of the other fees and permits that the clerk's office, monitors and tracks and then takes in receipt for, the only way that I really can have the time that I can evaluate our process to see if we have gaps or people missing or to improve our revenues across the whole line for the clerk's office would be having that dedicated time that I could look at things. Likewise, I've also been working closely with ordinances to make sure that ordinances align with what our long-term goal is. So I am open to any questions that you may have. And as far as the goals, the challenges, and the strengths, we tried to outline what those were so that you could do some reading ahead of tonight's meeting.
What kind of time do you think the ordinance review committee is, it's a council initiative and it's a council priority. What kind of time do you think and you collaborate with us, that committee, Rob, Andrea, and I, chaired by Rob, but how much of your time do you think bringing everybody together to have those conversations? It's got to be pretty time intensive, isn't it, in terms of
Yes. So usually what I do is if we are doing an ordinance that impacts several departments, then I will do the preliminary review and I will send out my preliminary review to those departments, ask them to start their wish list. Then I will schedule about a 45-minute time frame to an hour with them, and I will sit alongside those departments. I can do it collectively as one big group, or I can do it individually depending on what the need is and where I think the most change is going to happen within the ordinance. So from start to finish, the best one I could use as its example would be the roads and the streets. I had to meet with police separately than Public Works because their needs were so vast. And so I met with each of those groups at least probably an hour and a half. So that would have been a total of 3 hours. And then once I took that and went back to the ordinance and then worked with you and brought them back in and we worked as a solid team, then I would say that Dan, Earl, Megan, and I probably collectively had another 2.5 hours. And then, of course, that is separate from just bringing it to committee.
The work product was excellent, and it just it speaks to what you can do when you have the capacity to do, provide that kind of leadership. And if you were at the university, you'd be able to charge the town council budget. You know, you would literally send an invoice and the town council, it would come out of the town council budget to support your budget for the work. I'm not suggesting you do that, but that's how they do it over there. So.
Yeah, well, a lot of times I explain to people that your clerk's office is like your emergency room of the town. It's the triage center, it's the plug and chug. We're everyone's best friend, and we also are the one or the resource that makes sure that the phone calls get taken, the mail gets sorted, the payments get applied properly. So we're front of the house, and as I've said in other meetings, Zach is the back of the house. He's looking at reconciliation to be sure that when we made an option at the front counter, that we did it appropriately so that we don't get dinged in the audit.
Any other questions? Sarah?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Shelley. Nice to see you.
Yes. Same
I
here.
wanted to ask, I noticed the chart in here around the motor vehicle excise tax and the where we're at in terms of, this is telling me what's actually projected or what we budgeted for versus what we've collected this year, or is this comparing last year to the proposed budget? Can you talk a little about this chart?
Sure thing. So what you have in front of you is the FY26. When it says FY26 total in the left-hand column, the first column, that is the actual collection that came in, Sarah. So that is the real money coming across the counter and also online. And then when you look at the estimated in the middle, that would have been what we projected based on how many cars we have registered and when their expiration actually is. If they followed the perfect schedule and came in before their car expired, that's what we believed we should have collected. And the variance would be the up or down based on if we didn't collect as much as we thought in the month of December, but it came in January. So this is kind of a scale that fluctuates. I do have the calculations all the way back to 2015, and I can give you numbers going backwards if the council ever had interest. But the reason why this chart is just a small snapshot, I think, is to show you that collection is coming in pretty healthy. And as you saw in your budget on the revenue side, we have projected high based on where we've been trying to keep it pretty level over the years with just moderate growth. And as we see areas of improvement or areas that if I can have more time to work with our residents and our businesses in town, and I can look at collection a little more fine-tuned, we may see some growth in revenue.
Thanks.
So I hope that that answered your question.
Yeah, it's showing me then that we're fairly on track. If anything, we look like we'll come in maybe a little higher than what was predicted. Is that right?
We're hoping we will, yes. And
Yeah.
right now, all indications, Sarah, is that we should hit the mark that we anticipate.
Thanks. My next question is perhaps for you or perhaps for Clint. Clint, I was curious when looking again at that page that just came around today, the page, I don't know, 14 or so, the municipal, whatever it's called there, municipal budget summary page for FY27. When we look at the anticipated general fund revenues being down almost $100,000 in our proposed FY27 budget, I know a lot of those general fund revenues are what's being generated by fees, correct? What part of the fees are we expecting to be lower in FY27? And maybe Shelley knows if it's something that comes through her office, or maybe you can answer the question. I was curious what's taking that down by the approximately 100,000.
The revenue details are on in there as well. Again, on the general government, that's the total catch-all too for the MVR. We have to give them that number of what we're going to receive. So we're trying to, and that's the municipal valuation return. That's a report we give when we commit our taxes. So it's a little bit more than just all the governmentals, because we're trying to present all the revenues we have from multiple sources. So other things get wrapped in there. But when you look at some of the drops, I mean, it was one of the key drops is when we reprogrammed the after school. So, when she talked about the 85 decrease in expenses, there's $85,000 less revenue in there as well. And that does get wrapped into some of those intergovernmental or general government revenues. I'm trying to think some of the other ones that stick out. We do, that's EMS, that would come in a different one. Yeah, I would refer you to look at the revenue details line by line, and then
Okay.
that might be able to focus our question better.
But you just said 85 out of that 99 is just the change in how we're dealing with the after-school program?
Yes, but I wouldn't want
Okay.
to over summarize. There's a lot of other ups and downs throughout that
Sure.
revenue projection too.
But
Yep.
85 out of 99 is the biggest chunk. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Shelley. Next up is police. Thanks, Dan. Sorry. You want to formally ask your question? Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dan.
Dan Merrill, Police Chief. So I just did some quick math at the back because I've had the time to know it was coming. Looking at our department, it looks like, I'm about just under $55,000 up this year from last year. And, reviewing my budget, as Clint said, 95% of that, 97% of that's probably wages and benefits in the collective bargaining agreement wages. I went through and looked. If you look, there's a lot of zeros, like most of the other department heads have said. Outside of the wages and benefits, pretty much kept everything zero. I did make some minor tweaks in like training and travel, just because, as we've talked about, that stuff's a little more expensive. But did try and offset that in some of my other lines. Like one of my lines that I've talked to you guys about a little bit is the hybrid vehicles are really paying off for us as far as gas consumption goes. I know I was just looking at my budget today and I've spent less than 50% of what I should have, or less than what I had budgeted for gas so far this year, just because of the hybrid vehicles. So, at least anecdotally, I knew that they would pay off. I think that we've been having them now for 4 and 5 years. So I'm starting to really get a grasp as to how much they're saving us in gas. But, I'm not saying that I'm going to give back 50% of my budget. Sorry. Because as we all talked about,
Put another floor on that
the-
police station across the street.
the
Yeah.
gas market seems to be a little volatile right now. So just
gonna be
because I'm
fixed
using a
tomorrow,
little less
midnight. Yep.
doesn't mean that I'm gonna have $10,000 to give back. Sorry.
Yeah.
But again, knowing that we're one of the departments that has a big project coming up in FY27, we hope. We're trying to be very finite in what we're requesting and keeping it flat. So.
Okay. Yeah, you gotta
And
be-
we are,
Mhm.
Clint may not have said it, in case anybody hasn't known, we are the department that has struggled to fill a vacancy for the last 18 months. So when he didn't call it out earlier, I will own it, but I will say that it's, as I've said before, it's about hiring the right person and making sure that they want to stick and stay and they're a good fit for the town of Orono. And not everybody's meant to work here, and that's okay, but we're going to continue to hold the line and hire the right person. They'll come along.
I think it's great that we're different, and there's something to it, and our commitment to the community policing and all those things. So, and questions for Chief Merrill? Oh, yeah. What? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In your repairs and maintenance line, have we budgeted enough for what the average you've seen in the past for repairs that are needed on equipment and vehicles?
It's hard. I would say I kept it flat because repairs and maintenance is a hard line for me to gauge, because like this fiscal year, I wasn't expecting to have a car have to have $9,000 worth of, a single car have $9,000 worth of repairs to it. So when I look back at like 3 to 5 years worth of repairs and maintenance lines, I see those peaks and valleys. So some years it goes okay. Some years you have a lot of money, or some years you have a lot of expense. Some years you get by and I'm just like right on budget. I would say as of today, I would say this budget may run over a little bit. So, I think that like my fuel line is one of those that I use is I've kept that flat, knowing that if I go over in my repairs and maintenance, I have some balancing in my budget. So I did not make any increases, knowing that time value, it averages out. Does that answer your question? I'm not flush with money, but I'm not concerned because I think the council's been great with us. If I have a car break, I'm just gonna come to the council. Most likely, it's not gonna be $1,000 or $2,000 repair. So if it's something major like a motor, then it's something I'll have to bring to council and we'll have to make a bigger decision. So just day-to-day operations, we're okay. We'll make it.
Pretty savvy of you to have a police car at the end of my street on budget workshop day too, by the way, all day long. Came in and out. There was an officer there all day long, just kind of, so not
Police
saying it's a
officer.
coincidence, but it seems like it's an annual occurrence. But
We are high visibility everywhere in town. All people get the same visibility.
we ask you, we ask you to do a lot of like kind of unique things. And I know we have like in the Good Neighbor Committee and you stood up and you've done it time and time again. And it's harder than I think, it's a level of engagement that we expect from you and judgment and your team that is a little different. And you keep answering the call. So thank you. And sure.
This may have been asked and answered prior to my time, but 18 months without that position filled, what has been the impact of having that empty position in terms of cost or level of service?
So I would say we're fortunate in that it has an impact on staff because somebody's got to work the shifts. The captain does a great job at looking at the schedule and balancing, time off for people, work-life balance while still having to fill the shifts, right? I think one of the wild cards that I have coming into this fiscal year is going to be, I have one of my officers leaving on deployment for 9 to 12 months also. So along with being short on officer, I'm going to have one on deployment. So I'm actually going to be 2 short, probably till the end of the fiscal year, or probably till the end of this calendar year. So we'll be all right. We've been down more. And like I said, there's some creative scheduling that we can do to provide the level of services necessary while still giving staff time off. So, yeah.
Can I ask just a follow-up to that? Is it the same as the fire department where we have like forced overtime in that situation, or what happens exactly?
Yeah. So when the captain's building the schedule, essentially we're not as regimented in the amount of requiring to have 4 to 5 staff as the fire department does. So I would say that depending on the time of the year, in the summertime, we can give people a little more time off than we can when school's in session just because of the density of the town. And some of the weekend shifts, we don't fill all of them, especially in weekends, spring break, stuff like that. If there's a shift that can go unfilled, we'll leave it unfilled to try and give the benefit of staff. But rest assured that there's adequate coverage in town. It just is fluid. It doesn't look the same necessarily month to month because we kind of take a look at what's going on.
That makes sense. Okay. Thanks, Dan, very much.
Thank you.
Here we go. This is the one I've been waiting for. All the hard questions are coming now.
Hi, everybody. Tom
Thanks,
Higgins, Fire Chief. Council Harrison, you gave me the luxury of being able to sit there and think about your question for a few minutes. And I was thinking, this is like my 18th and 19th line item budget that I've had to put together. And I can tell you honestly, I've never walked away from one thinking I had too much. So, but with that said, I think our budget is pretty good. We've stayed flat like everybody else. Seems like put more zeros in than we did anything, or when you see a bigger number is because it's a small number. So if you add a little bit, it makes it double and things like that. But if there's anything that we're missing right now that I'd like to have that we don't have is some more paramedics. And for us to have the 2 positions that we have open to get those filled, and we're on that process to get them filled. That's going to help a lot with, like Dan just said, the life-work balance with not having forced overtime. If we get to that 6, even though we'd love to have 8, 10, 12, or 25 working, that 6 is something that can work for us right now and still allow for people to be on vacation. It allows for people to be out sick. It allows us to run 2 ambulances. So that works That's what we're missing really that way. There are other things that I don't need to tell you. Maybe we can all say it together. What's one thing that I'm saying that we need?
Ladder truck.
Ladder, yeah, there we go. We can all say it together. Do we want to say it all together or? No, but you know, when you're in this business long and part of things, you have to understand that not everything comes along as you might think it's planned out. It's maybe last year, no one would have said there'd be the loss of revenue sharing for this year and things like that. So I think we'll continue to work together. I mean, the ladder truck is something that we all need to think about for the future. I still want to do something with the SUVs and swapping around and some different things that I want to do, but we need to be able to afford to buy one for us to be able to do that. So really happy with the process. Happy with what I'm seeing with our young people that are really starting to become invested in our program. I'm hoping that the collective bargaining agreement, as hard as the manager and other parts of the team have worked on that, hoping that that will make a big difference to attract people to come here. I've always thought it was a great place for someone to work, and that's why I came here. But now having our young people buy into that and be a part of it and see how things change for them as they go to advanced school, go to paramedic school, or learn how to run a pumper, or to learn how to run a ladder truck, things like that. And so look forward to good things with this budget and into the future. I'll take any questions you have.
Andrew?
Thank you. I just, this not necessarily budget related, but it is, and I'm hoping that as we see that the grant has ended, we can stop calling them safer grant positions and just call them fire department positions. Little personal thing of mine, but in your repair item line, have we budgeted enough for the repair of equipment and trucks for
Sorry.
the upcoming year? I know it's hard to estimate, but considering some of the things that we've seen here in council with ladder truck and engine being repaired, I just want to make sure that we're budgeting enough and not under budgeting.
So I would rather under budget, really, and rather than to over budget and to have excess money there on it. So we try to find that middle of the road. This year, we're gonna have a little bit of a struggle, but it's like the police chief said, you know, you don't know from year to year on these things. So you have to look at trending of what your repairs have been for multiple years and make decisions that way. And I haven't been here long enough to analyze that way, but I wrote down here, I was sitting too, is that not only fire equipment expensive to buy, it's expensive to repair. And just like we have an unexpected repair right now, that's going to cost us a bunch of money. That is not as much as they originally told us, but it's still going to cost us a bunch of money. And it's no fun to have one thrown on a trailer and hauled to have it repaired, because that really will spike your hair up and make you wonder what it's going to cost. But the dealers do a good job with us. We have to decide whether it needs to go for mobile repair. We can have the mobile repair come here, or we have to go to a dealer. And so always analyzing, always looking at what's the best thing. But even though we might be a little bit short one year, there are other years that we're going to have surplus in it.
Any other questions? It feels like the town manager's been keeping us abreast of the negotiations with the unit, and it feels like it's been very fair and cordial and things like, you know, we can't talk about it publicly other than to say that seems like it's going okay.
I will say the manager's done a great job. This has been the most cordial. I like that word that I've seen in contract negotiations.
Yeah. Like it when people wave at the counselors when they see us out and they want to keep it clean and friendly. So one thing we've heard about is like some of the towns around in the Bangor region, there's fire departments like ours, and then there are fire departments that aren't staffed at the same, like, I don't want to name names, but there are some towns that have just a couple people on as opposed to the 6 that we have on, right? So what's going on? How are they making that happen? And what are they losing out for in terms of services by not being staffed at the same level that we are.
Yeah, I think that some of them are doing it just to put the very bare minimum so someone can roll a truck out the door and it shows up. So there's a truck that shows up at an event. And they're doing it with per diem employees. They pay them that flat hourly rate. There's no benefits involved. I don't like per diem. It steals from those that, pay to have their people available so that people will go work on their days off, at one of those places or everything. So that's how they're doing it. In short, is
Yeah.
that they're just, using other people's people or hiring somebody just so that there's someone in the fire station to greet them, but, they're not putting on, with us having 6, we can make a fair stab at a fire. I mean, NFPA would say we should have 13 to 15 people on scene before you're taking life safety actions, other than life safety. You shouldn't be inside because you can't do your 2 in, your 2 out. You have your operators, have crews on every level. So, we're like I would term our community, we're small, big town and a small, city, you know, and that's kind of what our fire department staffed like, really.
Yeah.
And as opposed to what they're doing with some of the other towns, and they pay them big money to do that because they don't pay the benefits that you're paying out.
Yep. No, there's something about, I mean, obviously the obligation of being the home of the university comes with costs, but also just kind of having the you know, I don't know, premier, I'll say it, no one's going to vote against me in this town for saying it. We've got the premier fire department in the region, I think. And, there's a cost to that and a staffing requirement for that. And I'm proud that we contribute to that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm proud of what our department do, and we get a lot of support from our partners. Old Town does a lot to support us. So does VZ, and Bangor will come support us. But we're here to support others, and they're happy to see our truck show up and our people show up.
Yep,
So,
I bet. All right. Well, thank you very much for all you do.
great. Thanks, everyone.
Next up is Public Works. I already got my brush out. Anybody else get the brush out yet for pickup? All right. Yeah, I'm gonna be like at the limit, the 12 feet high. And
I'm getting it out, meaning Annie is putting a lot of work
We
in
know
my
everybody.
yard.
We all know who does the landscaping at Powers House.
Yeah. If it looks nice, it's not.
All right.
Don't
With
look-
that important aside.
Okay, I'm Earl Labonte, Director of Public Works. Our budget is very streamlined and there's no extras in there. There's always something you can cut, but if you do, there's consequences. We kept it as close as we could, and I used prior year averages to validate what we're doing. And that's where we found some of the accounts were not being funded sufficiently, primarily the electricity accounts and others. As far as, I know everybody wants to know about maintenance of the vehicles and the equipment. Again, we balance that out using our averages. We try to keep our fleet up. We did get some new vehicles this year. That's going to help us on our maintenance costs because they're not going to require as much. But the others are. They get old. They've been used. We've got some of the best people in the public works environment working here, and they keep up. We also, within our public works, we have the environmental section, which I believe you're on to come up separately. Is that right? Okay, if not.
Come on up. Yeah.
We also have our facilities is not here, but we take care of all the facilities. In the environmental, we have to ensure that we're complying with all federal and state regulations. And there are a lot of requirements there. It keeps Megan very busy. She's also very key in the stormwater for this whole region. So, but saying that, I'm not sure what else you're going to want to ask about. So we do use a pavements program to help us justify our needs for payments. We're trying to keep and get our payments conditions up to an acceptable standard. And we use that or are using that to try to program where our next streets and repairs are going to be. In pavements, you have several different functions. You have operational care, which is basically the potholes and sweeping. You have your reconstruction and you have your overlays. All of that's expensive. Our vehicles, the prices on them are going up and up every year. Your snowplow trucks now cost almost as much as his ladder truck. So they do increase. Well, they're not as bad as his, but they're getting there.
Put a
500,000.
plow on the front of the ladder truck and
We
cross
could.
two.
We
yeah,
could.
yeah.
If we didn't have
Now we're
contract,
thinking. Yeah, now we're
if we
thinking.
didn't have contract rubbish pickup, we could have them on the garbage trucks.
Yeah.
But we don't have that. We have to do within, and with the small crews and how they work, they've been doing very well. I don't think you get very many winter complaints other than people wanting the sidewalks done before the snow hits them. But anyway.
Yeah, yep. Sidewalks on Main Street. Well, got it. Nope, we'll talk about that later. We've got work to do there, but that's on us as much as anything else, obviously. Any other questions? Nope. Excited about, nope. Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry.
I can't see, so I don't know if Megan is up there and if we're asking environmental questions now too, or just.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Hi, Megan. I was hoping you could
Hi.
speak a little bit to the stormwater fee. I know we got a memo in the appendices about this. We've been hearing about it on and off for a long time. It sounds to me like a great idea because it would help with environmental concerns, and it also means people are paying for the amount of stormwater they're using. Folks who take measures not to be using that system so much would pay less, and those who didn't would pay more. As I understand it, it would also apply to the university. It has seemed to me like kind of a no-brainer as something to move forward with, but I guess my two questions are, my understanding is it's not currently something we have. And the second one is, it looks like there's steps you put at the end of this memo that we would take to get to that point. And I guess I'm wanting to know, is the funding already in this budget that you need to take those steps to work to get this in place, as it would be, I understand it, an income generator eventually? That was maybe three questions. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not currently in this budget, but we are working towards it. So number one on those steps in that appendix show that we're working on the feasibility assessment right now with some engineers, and we're looking to see what the state of our stormwater is right now with a condition assessment. So once we kind of get that number and see where we're at, we'll be able to move on to the next steps and see how much that feasibility or how much that utility fee should be. So we're in the very beginning steps of that, but that would be more of a conversation with you guys and probably pretty public focused as well, because that would show up just like a water utility fee or a wastewater fee. So it would be a bigger discussion.
So we will hear from you back about that when that feasibility study is done. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yep. We're working on it with the grant right now.
And do you or Earl have a sense of, if we decided to move forward at that point in time, including, as you said, the very important public meetings that would need to be held, what is the timeline for that whole process typically? Is it a year? Is it longer once the feasibility study is in?
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but I believe most municipalities that do have them, it took over a year, if not two, to really get it implemented. It depends on how you guys would want to implement it, because it could take in GIS data to show how much impervious surface you actually have per parcel, and that's how much you get charged. So that would take a little bit of time as well. But it's a longer process.
Appreciate that you're moving it forward, and thanks for letting me know it's in the budget to keep moving it forward this year. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Andrea?
I shouldn't, but I'm gonna. Are we budgeting for crosswalk line painter?
I didn't hear the question.
I'm joking. I'm joking. It's just something that we've talked about, whether or
We
not
are
we
not-
have or not, but
We're not buying a new one, but we did put it out to bid. The bids are open tomorrow at
we put out for pavement marking bids, and they're supposed to be opened at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
So more to come once we open those.
We did get 2 bids that I know of so far. They still got to 10 o'clock to get them in. What I actually did was I called every pavement marking company in New England and told them we had a proposal out. And I actually did get some of them to call back and question a few things. So maybe we'll get something that's going to be worthwhile this year. Also, we're going to, if we can, we're going to phase it so that some of it can be done earlier and then proceed on with that. But we have 97 crosswalks in the town, so that's quite a few. And none of them are the same. Some of them are 12 inches wide, some of them are 18 inches wide. I'm talking about the stripes. So it makes it difficult to have them come in and paint them because you don't want to put a 12-inch one on top of an 18, then you've got a lot of mess. Or they overlap each other and you end up with one solid patch instead. So it's going to be interesting.
I just want to say that during my tour of the facility, I was just really impressed with the talent and skill of your team. Everybody was busy. You have people that were fixing things, cleaning things, putting things together, and I appreciated the time that everybody took to show me things. And Megan, I do have a question for you. Are there community projects that we as a council could be helping to promote to have residents participate in?
The only thing that comes off the top of my head is the street and stream cleanup. That will be May 16th. So that's coming up soon. But I'm not a super quick thinker off the top of my head. So that's the only thing that comes to mind right now.
And you'll get more on that the April 13th, because that's also going to be the day of our grand opening of the Union Street boat launch area and all the improvements that happen there and a few fixes for some winter damage.
And like not this year, but I'll try and remember to bring it back because I'm always interested in these things. I know because I came from Minnesota that they use a totally different paint system than they do here in New England. And I don't know if there's a way that we could see if some of those paint systems work here, just like a one-off crosswalk, because they last significantly longer. In Minnesota, I don't know if they would here because I know it's a much higher freeze thaw cycle, but I don't know if you guys have looked into some of those like crazy, but if it does work out, maybe think about, I know it's way more expensive upfront, but maybe over 5 years it would be cheaper.
Yeah. You can actually do your crosswalks with thermoplastic instead of paint, and they're supposed to last for 5 years, but they don't, because if the cars turn on them, it wears them out faster. But you do get at least 2 years normally, but they do cost about, I think it's 10 times more to put them in.
Doesn't sound cost effective. Thank you.
Anyway.
Don't do that then.
Sarah's got another one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. Just been tracking where open positions are, and I didn't hear anything, but it looks like you have one position that's vacant right now. I was curious what position that is. And I want to say out loud that this department's the only department I'm aware of in my time here that's gone down in FTEs. So I can't imagine you could afford to take a further hit. So I'm not suggesting that, but I still would like to know what position that is.
It's a maintainer 2, a CDL operator. And the only reason it's vacated because the person that was in it went over to the wastewater plant. So he transferred. So that's why it's open, and getting CDL people was a little difficult. The first time we advertised, we didn't have a single applicant that had a CDL. This time we had 7, and we are in the final phases of filling that slot right now.
That's great. Where does it fall on the chart you have for us? Is a maintainer CDL? Is this one of our truck driver, or what is
Public Works labor, his Public Works laborer 2.
I don't see a laborer 2. I just see truck driver, laborer, or laborer. So
yeah, it's a truck driver.
Truck driver.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you so much.
Okay. I guess that's great. And next up, PCF.
Good evening. Chris Prue, WPCF. I do want to remind Earl that I've lost 4 guys to Public Works, so he owes me 1. All in fun. So real quick, as we discussed earlier, my budget is up about $102,000, around 5%. The majority of that is insurance, workers' comp, Medicaid, that's up 55,000. There's a new formula they're using for my reimbursement to admin here at the front office for the stuff that they do for me. That increased my contribution by 65,000. I do want to mention it won't be that much every year. The way that they structured the formula is on a growth basis, a percentage. So if I don't grow and the town does, it may drop. But either way, that's a big increase this year. And then my new staff member is another 65. I do want to mention that the magic number is 3120. That's what I've lost in man hours since 22. That's 78 weeks of man hours. And that was made, originally I lost a full staff member. That decision was made without my input. And shortly after that, we lost the shared position with Public Works. So those are the 2 positions that I lose those 78 weeks. A new staff member full-time at the WPCF will give me, 52 of those weeks back. So let me have it, Dan.
You don't ask for much.
I'm asking
man.
again.
No, you don't ask for much. So you're running 100-year-old pipes. It's hard to sit up here and give you a hard time about anything, really. I mean, as much as I like to give everybody a hard time. So you get an awful lot done with not a lot of resources. So
And any questions on the formula, I can get into more detail if the council wants it.
okay.
Yep.
Nothing?
We're not gonna
Nothing.
give you a hard time. We know what happens if you're not around. So
Going after 7 and there's nothing.
yeah, that's what happens if you go last. But
I'm always last.
yeah, alphabetical.
Okay.
Next year we'll do it reverse alphabetical. And
All right.
well, it's handy. It's handy context to know what you've had to absorb in terms of staff loss positions and the.
It's been difficult.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, the environment that we work in, I can't say, you're going to have to do more because we lost these guys. Usually it doesn't get done. And so we just prioritize and do what's most important. And to be honest with you, what's hurting is the collection system. That's what it's hurting.
The collection system?
Well, the cleaning. So ideally, I'd like to do 85,000 feet a year. If I can get 70, I'm happy. Last year we did 59. And that's simply because I don't have the men to do it. And I have, this year, my 2 guys that are going to clean sewers have never done it before. Either one of them. So they'll be doing it, but it'll be a learning curve. My good guys leave. I've lost 3 guys to other plants recently in the last month. We train them, they get licensed, and they go to different plants. You can't blame them. The one that just left, he's running his own plant now, so.
Yep.
It's tough, but we'll make it work.
Also
Easy
turns
with
out
enough
that
time.
it also turns out that I owe you some money. So I found that out from Shelley today. So I'm a little
You haven't
sheepish
paid your
about it.
bill?
I'm gonna take care of it. I promise tomorrow.
Okay,
Check-
you go
you-
past 90 days, there's no abatement.
Yeah, I know the interest is stacked up. I'll take care of it. But Sarah,
Right.
Yeah, Chris, can you speak a little bit more about what you just said? If folks are going elsewhere, I'm curious about why that is. Is it just because you're training people so well and they're promoted up to higher positions elsewhere? Is there a
Exactly,
concern
yes.
about the number? Sorry? Is that it?
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
that is why they leave. They want to move up in the industry, and the room to do that in Orono is a long wait.
Right.
So
We're
they
small.
go to, 2 of them have gone to Bangor. They've already moved up the ranks there. The one I just lost recently is running the plant in VZ.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure we were giving you the support you needed, so your staff were being, compensated
Yeah.
fairly and are, not having to work tons of overtime hours, the same things we're always checking in with the police and fire about. But it's not that. It's really that it's a small department, and to move up, you often have to move laterally.
Exactly.
John, I
Okay, thank you.
John?
I just had a question looking at the goals and strength sheet. It listed one of the primary goals is that third-party sludge disposal. Is that active right now that that's like a third-party service? Like a contracted service, or is that something that's coming?
On which point are you speaking of?
It just lists under goals, the third-party sludge disposal,
So that would be to have an outside contractor move sludge off in site. Right now, we truck it ourselves.
okay, so that's something that's coming.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I spend another 7 weeks of the year with a man to move sludge.
Mhm.
And of those 7 weeks, 3 solid weeks, he's literally sitting on the landfill waiting for the guy to tell him to dump. And while he's doing that, we're shut the press down. We can't run the press because there's no truck to put the sludge in. And we want to move sludge, we can do it in a day if we didn't have to stop, but because we have to keep stopping, it takes us 3 days. So having it moved off site by a third party, they would use a 30-yard container. And we wouldn't be able to fill that in a day. So we could dewater all day long and not have to shut the unit down.
So more cost coming potentially with the contracted service, but
It will
also
be- it will be
regaining a lot of
increase with
staff
that,
hours
yes,
back.
but we won't be caring for our own truck, that's its own expense. It's around 15,000 a year to take care of that. Most of it's buying tires, but
And the
it's
two
a rough
pieces,
spot up there.
yeah, and the two pieces in the water, I mean, that need to get, that it's worth repeating is one, we're paying for the water because it weighs a lot and we don't want to anymore. Number two, he's getting way ahead of the curve and seeing that we're probably going to get regulated out of having the amount of water we have in our waste. So we're going to be forced to get it out, or otherwise it'd be some penalty. So we're trying to beat them to the penalty
Yeah.
punch. And he's set
Landfills
you well
are-
up to do that.
Landfills are, Juniper Ridge has not done it yet, but other landfills in the state, they have moisture limits. So your sludge has to be a certain percentage. And if it's not, they either refuse you or they charge you a surcharge per percent. If they required a 20% solid and you brought in 17%, that's 3% lower than what they want. And they charge $7 per ton per percent. So if you was 17 instead of 20, it very easily could add $50,000 a year on your sludge disposal fees, a moisture limit. Juniper Ridge has not gone there yet, but I know they've talked about it.
Okay.
Dan, I
Anything
have
else?
one more.
Sure.
Yeah, this is again really probably more on just to Clint, but on the overview page, again, since there is an additional FTE being asked for here, it was great that you highlighted it verbally, but could we get a notation here on these pages when it tells us current FTEs? Could it also tell us if a new FTE is being asked for in the budget? Could that be annotated there going forward?
Yeah, what page are you looking in particular? I just want to make sure I'm seeing, because I know we did call it out.
You're
What
off
page?
mic, Clint. I can't hear you. What?
Sorry, what page was that on specifically? I just don't want to have an oversight on it.
I'm looking at the front page for WPCF, the one with the graphic about the superintendent and the structure of employees, and it says current FTEs 5, vacancies 0, but it doesn't anywhere notate that there isn't new FTE being asked for. Thanks.
Yep, gotcha.
Good. Andrew, you have one more?
One more. This might be a Clint question, but I didn't see, assuming or guessing that when we train and license and they leave, the license goes with the person? Or is there a way of, I don't know
So,
what the
yes,
cost is,
so-
is there a way for reimbursement of that?
Not particularly. We don't require with his current staff to be certified as high as up as he is. We are looking with the additional staff to consider a person equaling which would have a role of as an assistant director, but it wouldn't be a new position. It would be a current employee fulfilling an assistant director in the absence, which would move up their certification levels. If that were to occur, we'd probably look at that one. Otherwise, they're just maintaining the certifications they need to run ours. The one example he shared, the two examples, one situation, they can hire low certification levels because they have enough staff that they can evolve them or train them themselves. And then some of the smaller facilities, they don't have to have the higher level certification, so they can get around that. And then the last one that I've learned recently is that if you use an engineering firm where the person on that staff has a certification, they can operate it using the license of the
Again.
engineering firm. So there's a lot of little nuances to it, but yes, if we get into the higher levels to equal to Chris's certification, we're going to look at that. But again, we have not yet implemented a second in command with that same certification.
The state doesn't require anybody to be licensed except me. It's to our benefit to have other operators licensed to learn the trade, and move up. I have one employee that could fill that assistant position. And hopefully he'll want to run it, someday himself. He may not, but it prevents the town from having to look, because it's going to be difficult to find a grade 5 operator. If there's any out there, they're working, and you'll have to sweeten the pot for them to jump ship, so.
Sounds like hopefully a budget a long time from now.
Long time.
Yep.
I just had another birthday. so-
What's that?
I just had another birthday, so.
You look great. So we'll get you home now and get you some
Yeah.
shut eye. So Chris, thanks so much.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next year, if I'm sitting in the middle, we're gonna do him first, okay?
Okay.
Yep. All right, so that's final follow-up. Any items we identified, we talked about, our next meeting is to talk about the next budget workshops, April 27th.
Well,
And
and we'll put a little bit of time on the 13th as we finalize that final budget, just to check back in with you in 1 week.
okay, I wanted to look at the, we had a couple questions. We had the, just for those following along at home who couldn't find a seat in the audience with us tonight, I miss Frederica and, Pat Smith, Paul Smith, Orono taxpayer, Paul Smith. But anyway, for those following along at home, we were having our first budget workshop, so we're like a week behind, right? If you look at the calendar that's on the budget page. Sarah, are you following along with this in terms of the schedule? So today is April
Thanks.
6th, so we're doing this meeting was scheduled for the 30th, but we're having it on the 6th. And we wanted to talk about, we'll do a little bit of budget stuff at our town council meeting on the 13th, have our next workshop on the 27th. And then we need to decide, and we talked about it on the agenda review meeting today, whether we want to call a public hearing for the budget stuff on May 4th, which is consistent with our existing schedule, or do we think we need to back off 2 weeks and do it on May 18th? I felt like we made a lot of really good progress today, and I don't know how many more iterations or calculations we're going to want to ask of staff. We haven't heard yet what the school's going to do, but we're not going to make decisions, I don't think, based on what the school does, except for when we vote on the school budget as citizens ourselves, right? We're not looking to make up any difference that they have to do on our side with what they end up doing on their side. So how do people feel? Do we feel like we could press ahead? Again, and this is, I ask because we have to call the public hearing, and it takes a couple weeks to do that. So we've got a consent items on our agenda for next week, and we have to decide whether we're going to do May 4th or May 18th. And we could talk about it again next week before we vote on it. So Sarah, what do you think?
Am I on mute? I don't know. Hold on.
Nope, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I was on a different screen. I couldn't see. Yeah, I think it really is up to the full council. I would say that although we got the departmental presentations today, which was 1 week behind the original proposed schedule, we're actually 2 weeks behind the original proposed schedule for when council was supposed to see this manager recommended budget, which is no slight on staff or Clint. It's been a crazy process. We had a meeting canceled for snow. I know a lot of things happened, but we are actually 2 weeks behind on that front, Dan. So I think it's more about whether counselors feel like they've had enough time to delve fully into this budget yet. We only got it on Thursday as a council, and trio links are still not up. I don't personally feel the need to go into the minutia of the trio budget. I think the level we have been presented here is exactly what we need as council to make council level decisions. But someone else might feel differently about that. So I think it kind of needs to be a full council decision. If we stick with the 4th for our public hearing, that would give us a small time on the budget, perhaps next week, and then a focus time on the 27th, which is only 1 week before the 4th. So if council did on the 27th say to staff, we want this change or that change, it doesn't give staff a long time to get that ready before the 4th. It would only give 1 week. So I guess I can see some advantages personally to moving it. I don't want to set staff up for a crazy, impossible week. And I would hope we would want something posted for the public that was the actual council budget, like a week before the public hearing at least. And so I guess I feel like perhaps the 18th would be better, although it does involve moving the date and we would need to really publicize that very much. Cody would have to take charge of that to get it out to the public. But I feel like having the public have time to see a budget if there's changes, maybe the 18th makes sense to me. I'd mostly like to hear from other folks.
Okay. What do other people think? Finance Committee Chair?
I will defer to what Sarah's thoughts are. I mean, my thought is that compared to prior years, there weren't a lot of changes. There wasn't a lot of substantive disagreements on what this budget should look like. So I'm okay moving forward with the current schedule, but if we want to, allow for more time for public review, et cetera, I'm fine with that as well. But this budget process has been the smoothest I have seen in my 3 years.
John?
I was just gonna say, in terms of my time to be able to review things and come up with any additional questions or commentary, I feel like that's accounted for with that May 4th date. But obviously want to be respectful of the staff that have to get everything out to the public in time to make that happen. So we'd kind of look to that.
Just keep on going.
I'm fine with going ahead as we're talking about scheduling for me.
May 4th?
Yep.
Okay. Andrea?
The same. I say stay on schedule for the 4th.
Yep. Rob?
I agree. Unless Sarah feels particularly strongly that the 18th, I'm willing to go in that direction. I don't think it will affect anything except in the event that we need more time with staff. We'll need more time for this to be done in a way that doesn't feel stressful. Is there any disadvantage to pushing it to the 18th? Just in case? I don't anticipate a lot of but who knows?
I see it as we don't have to decide until 7 days and 6 days and 23 hours from now. So I guess if Clint, I would suggest, it sounds like people are comfortable with May 4th. Clint, I would suggest if you and the team come back to us and say, and you want the extra 2 weeks, let us know before we vote next week. But otherwise, if you put it in, Sarah, again, if you feel strongly, I think there's a lot of appreciation for what you chair, given the leadership you demonstrate on the budget process. But I think I'd suggest the agenda for next week says the 4th, and then at the start of the meeting, Clint, we're going to ask you, we're still good on the 4th. If you feel differently, or any other counselor feels differently, we can obviously talk about it then. But it feels like going with the 4th makes sense.
Since I have you, can I ask one question?
Yep.
Just one.
Sure.
So we'll be working with staff, timelines. I just want to know, 1 week between the hearing and the council's vote to adopt, is that adequate if you had 1 week after the hearing?
Well, right now we've got May 4th is public hearing,
Yeah,
and then you got May 11th budget review workshop if needed,
yep,
and then you got May 18th adoption.
yep. So I was just wondering if it went, does the 1 week meal any better if you went 11 and 18?
No, it doesn't feel
Okay.
good. Yep.
Wait,
just
Dan,
want-
wait, I'm confused, Clint. So you're saying if we moved the budget hearing from the 4th to the 11th or to
11th.
the 18th?
To the 11th, and then you could vote on the 18th still.
I see. So we
The
could move the
hybrid.
budget hearing to the 11th, and then we could
Yep.
still vote on the 18th.
It's a hybrid. Yep.
No, yeah, I like, in case we have work we need to do after the hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
So
and
4 or 18.
can I ask a question, Dan?
Sure.
Thanks. It was helpful to hear from the rest of council. My real question to Clint is, if we come into our meeting on the 27th as a council, and there's any change at all that we want to the budget, which I don't know that there will be. I agree it's been very smooth, but I did ask, for example, to at least look at vacant positions. If we came out going, we don't want to fill one of these, or some specific change, you can turn that around in the budget within a day and get it published for the public? Because, isn't there a certain time we just need the budget as it's being presented out to the public before the public hearing? It shouldn't come to them a day or two before, right? I would hope at least a week before, but I don't know. How fast could you turn that around if we had some suggested change we wanted as a council on the 27th?
Again, it's the level of the change.
Right.
Great question. I will have that fully vetted for you on the 13th when we make the final decision. Is that a fair response?
Yeah,
I want to
just
talk to
think-
my team.
Yeah, I think that
Yep.
would be great, because I don't know if there will be any change suggested there, but it seems perhaps as likely or more likely than from the public hearing. We've never had one coming out of the public hearing yet, to my knowledge, and we have
Yep.
had them as a council in the past. So I don't want to set us up in a situation where the public can't see the actual budget being discussed at the hearing at least 5 or 6 days ahead, if not a full week ahead. I'd prefer a full week. So that's why I wanted to move it out. Thank you.
Okay. And then we did want to talk about is the echo? All right. Save me from having to go back home and watch it again tonight. Watch my highlights. Seriously, I do. I know I do it on knitting night when you guys come over. So we talk about vacant positions. You want to bring something into us next week on that for a conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes a good use of that gap week between that and the.
Yeah.
Yep.
And to the extent that, I think it's a responsible conversation to have. I didn't hear a lot of energy around, but I know some of those
Update.
positions are being filled, and we don't want anyone to think someone who's getting ready to accept the job and start in a week. Nothing should suggest that council is not giving you direction as a council to suspend anything you're doing in terms of job searches at this point, right? We all agree on that? Yep.
Yes.
So thanks. So, it's a good conversation to have, and I thought it was brought up very respectfully. So, all right. Anything else for that's next workshop? Guess
Dan,
we
I have
get to-
one.
Oh, sure. Sarah?
The second thing that I was just hoping we would do as a council, I think it's been implicit in the conversations today, and thanks to staff, because they get the credit for making it so amazing this year that we're not only seeing what this year's proposed budget is, but some real clear indications of where we know things maybe are coming to us in FY28. But I would love us to just recap, in addition to what we're voting on this year, what are the increased expenses we know are still coming in 28? I heard the bond will come in 28 and will hit for the first time. So that will be an increase as the bond payments will start. I heard library staffing. I don't know what year exactly the library is supposed to be finished. I obviously heard the ladder truck again. It continues to be a conversation about if and how we are able to fund that. And I also heard that the safer position, there will be an additional $95,000 cost in 28 that we're paying out of reserves this year. So those are the 4 I heard clearly, but there might be something else. And I would just love us to also just recap that if Clint could do that for us, because this is the kind of planning that I think is so responsible and an amazing job we're doing, that we're not just doing this year, but we're showing that we're looking ahead, along with also those great ideas Clint has put forth for how to make up that gap in the economic development and partnerships and collaboration. So I'd like a little recap of that also, ending up the budget process. Thanks.
Okay. Are you doing that on purpose, Cody, or is it just you? All right.
What was going on? You were making some funny faces, Dan.
Yeah, it's taking us all out of focus, and it's I don't think he's doing it on purpose though. But so
Okay, cool. Anyway, that's my only other ask.
sorry.
And really, again, what Jacob said, the most amazing budget process so far, the most amazing documentation, and just incredible, incredible job by all staff.
That's on that note. Anybody have anything else to share? Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you, staff. Good work. Appreciate you spending all this time with us, and it really is helpful. So thank you. And we're adjourned.